George Brauchler with you here. It is that magic update. Middle of the week tells you that, well, after 8 o'clock, every minute that we have on this show is a minute closer towards the weekend. Congrats, folks. You're just about there. What a week it has been already. Temperatures continue to fluctuate on paper. I don't know about reality here. Today, 75 degrees, late afternoon showers. There's little raindrops coming out of a small cloud. Tomorrow, all the way down to 53. That's a 22-degree drop. And now it's a big cloud with only 3, but gigantic raindrops. Like each raindrop could crush you. And then Friday, of course, we start to climb back out of the hole at 55 degrees, windy and cool. And then according to the paper, which is, it's all myth at this point, by next Tuesday, we get up to 72 degrees. I'll be very candid with you. Other than Saturday, which ends at 62, I've stopped caring for the following week because, as you know, I will be out of the saddle doing a little bit of fall break with the kiddos. I had asked if there was a way that I could do the show abroad. And they said, no, you have to do it as a dude. No, I'm kidding. They said no initially, like, no, it's just too technically complicated. And I was like, good, And then the other day, Kelly calls me in and he goes, I think we can make it work. And I'm like, oh, what? This was like showing up at, post-Thanksgiving dinner with the cleanup. You're laying around on the couch. You're finding every reason to talk to every old person in the family that's turned out, because at some point, that whether it's your spouse, your sister, all these other people have pitched in to clean up, and you want to walk into the kitchen somewhere about 95% finished. And you go, hey, what can I do to help out? And they're like, no, we've got it. You just go sit on the couch. You get the credit for the ask, but you don't actually have to. Yeah. That's where I was going with the, no, I'll do the show from abroad. Sure. I mean, isn't there some way? And it was like, we can't make it work. I'm like, oh, come on.
Oh, shoot.
And then once it was, we actually think we can make it work. I just stared back like, you're calling my bluff, and I don't like it.
I'm uncomfortable.
Nonetheless, we won't be testing the technology on this trip, so I don't even know who's in next week. But
let's see. I worked on that yesterday, actually.
Oh, you did?
I worked on it. Yeah, we've got. Let's see if I remember. Pete is in on Monday. Jeff Hunt Tuesday. Pete Wednesday, and then Jimmy Sengenberger fills up the Thursday and Friday.
I thought Friday was Tim Hernandez. Aren't we bringing in terrorist Tim?
Yes, we are.
Isn't he coming in to just drop some wisdom on the peeps out here about who's really at fault for the Israeli attack? I guess that was my way of saying I've stopped caring about the weather after this weekend, as long as we can get out safely. Although I am a little more concerned today than I was a few days ago about traveling abroad, just when all this stuff is going on, man.
You think? Yeah. Maybe. At least you're not going towards the Middle Easty places.
Well, you mean where Amanda is?
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm crushing Amanda on the WhatsApp, and she's like, I guess it was only annoying when 20 or 30 texts would go unresponded to when she was here, like in Washington, D.C. Yeah. But, last night I wasn't sleeping well, and I was like, oh, the math kind of works out on the time. And I'm like, listen, no screwing around here. This is serious. I need to know what's going on over there. Are you okay? Is anything changing? You just need to be hyper vigilant here, because we just don't know what's going to happen. And there's a part of me, and I'm no expert on the Middle East, that worries that as this thing begins to progress, and we'll talk about this later in the show, it's almost becoming a worldwide litmus test of sorts. And as more and more people expose us to who they really are, I wonder at what point does the Arab world, if at all, begin to start to shift its view. And then I think to myself, I mean, she is a white American kid in the middle of a place where there aren't a lot of white American kids. So mercifully, with that kind of panicked WhatsApp text, I got a response.
Can't imagine why you didn't sleep well.
Yeah, well, there's that, and there's 8 million other things, but that was on my mind. So finally, I get a response back. Good. Everything's fine. And I'm like, well, okay. At
least it wasn't an emoji.
Or some sort of a hostage video or something like that. I mean, geez. Yeah. So there's all that to contend with. But so we're going to go out of town, and I'm looking forward to it. Going to hit a little bit, I think, London. Although as soon as I'm like getting excited for it, there's articles about a bed bug infestation in Paris that's now making its way to London. I'm like, well, guess we can sleep standing up or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, do check the mattresses though before you do anything in the hotel.
I hope to get a place with a mattress. I do.
Yeah, you hope so.
There's oh, wait a minute. Here's something. I'm reading this from our friend about Tim Hernandez.
Oh, yeah.
Alexis said something in here, a little tweet. I'll have to read it when I get a chance to read all the teeny tiny print stuff like that. There's plenty to talk about, by the way, today with Tim and others, because I think that's an ongoing issue. But yesterday for me, Billy, was Twin Aspen Dental Day.
Yeah, how was that? You had people put hands in their mouth.
They did. And first off, I think they've done me the solid of just sort of pre-designating me as Shiloh every time.
Yeah, I think it says more about you than anybody else.
Well, and I think it also says something about Shiloh, which is anyone else here is at risk for quitting or suing.
Yes, exactly.
But not Shiloh.
No,
for some reason, Shiloh's completely fine. We'll go back and forth laughing about things that I think to myself, if anyone else comes by this little mouth cubicle or whatever we're doing here, it's gonna be a problem. It's like, for instance, and I don't mean this, she's telling me a story about a dude. She's like, I was having a bad experience with this first time customer, probably guys in his like mid-60s, just very gruff, not very happy and all this. And I'm doing the little x-rays, they put those things in your mouth, and now they've got me too. And she says, we've got to do like 12 of these things or something. And she's like halfway through, dude who's just been nothing but stern and stoic the whole time says, I could have never made it as a gay man. And she's like, where did that come from? But these are the kinds of ridiculous conversations that we have. So
I want to know what was going on in the guy's head at that time.
Right.
This is obviously...
And I guess he followed that up after her laughter with, I have a ridiculous gag reflex. And I thought, what the heck? But she's just great at what she does. She gets in, she gets out. But, they have this TV where you're down there. And I said this before. You think this is so stupid. They're just running these little videos of puppies and kittens and stuff. And it's so stupid. And pretty soon I'm watching this thing. I'm 10 minutes in and I'm like, look at the puppy. Oh, look at that puppies. Puppy's chasing the ball. And I'm like, oh my goodness. But yesterday I get in and I had been listening to the closing arguments in the McClain case.
Yeah.
From the time that I left some other video thing I had to do, I was able to start listening to everything. So I'd listened to the prosecutions and now we were getting into the defense. And so I asked her, can I pretty please put this thing in my little shirt pocket and listen to it while you're doing your voodoo? I said, if it all bothers you, content or whatever, you tell me and I'll turn it off. And so I start listening. She's like, no, go ahead. So I start listening to it. And then once I get a couple things out of my mouth, I'm able to be like, hey, are you sure this isn't bothering? She's like, no. I want to hear this. I'm like, oh, great. So I end up listening to everything, including the rebuttal close. The whole thing took hours, I think, to get through. I was able to do some other stuff. Boys team got picked up for an extra playoff game yesterday for football. Oh, buddy. Wow. This was a character building season.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they did much better than they did the day before. But, whoo, I mean, at one point, I had...
Is this the flag football stuff?
Flag football.
Yeah, much better.
Yeah. Well, I want to do the tackle stuff. So does Grandma Lemma Ding Dong. But someone doesn't want him to. And it turns out that's the person with all the authority.
The thing for me, though, is, and I've coached flag, is I encourage kids to really do the flag. At least, I mean, I would say at tackle, you really don't have to do tackle until high school age. You really don't have to. And the reason that I would encourage flag football up until then, one, lack of injury. Two, you play the sexy positions. I mean, imagine if Graham's experience this season was, hey, you're left tackle. You're going to stand here and run into another middle schooler for 2 hours on a Saturday. That's stupid. And I think it's dumb. I think it's really, really dumb to play tackle at such a young age, because there's a group of kids that have to play the unsexy positions. And I think that all the kids there, nobody when they're a kid goes out into their backyard and pretends it's It's the last down of the Super Bowl, and I'm the center.
Yeah, that's right.
Nobody
I'm
does
snapping
that.
to the kicker.
Exactly. Nobody does that. They're all
No.
either going to throw the pass or catch
Well,
the pass or run for the touchdown.
And for
So let
whatever
'em
it's
do
worth,
it.
I think Tom Brady didn't start playing until high school.
Yeah.
Aaron Judge, who also could have played in college. And of course, the dude, I was listening to a podcast with him and Mookie Betts. And he says, I was begging my mom my freshman year of college.
Yeah.
All my bros are playing. I want to play. And she was like, no, you get your grades up. You keep them up in sophomore year. And he's like, I was a baseball guy. And Mookie Betts goes, how big were you as a freshman? He goes like 6'6". And I'm like, oh my God.
Oh Lord.
Oh my God. That's unfair.
Yeah.
That's unfair. So, so at one point I told Graham after the game, this gives you some indication. And and it wasn't that they weren't competitive. It just wasn't as close as it could have been.
Yeah.
I said, Peyton Manning threw 6 picks against the San Diego Chargers. Okay, just saying. And he was like, when was that? I'm like, sometime in the past. I don't know. Like, I can't tell you the day.
You're ruining the moment.
Yeah. But so I'm listening, though, to the game. I mean, I'm watching the game while I'm listening to the rebuttal close on this thing. And maybe we can talk about that later. But it was just sort of an interesting, I don't know, crossing of the streams, if you will, where I'm in there doing the dentist work with Twin Aspen. And it was fantastic. Dr. Schneider, by the way, I had been saying, I want to go in there. I want to see the baby pics.
Yeah.
Nope. She doesn't come back until Monday.
Oh,
she's been off since.
I think she planned that.
I think she
said,
did too.
When's George going to be in? Okay,
she too.
Following
in fact, at one point when I saw Dr. Richter, he came out to chit chat. And I said, listen, because he said, dude, for 12 weeks, I have been almost entirely on my own.
Oh,
so I've had to call in a good buddy who we went through dental school together. He's all world and he's helped out a bunch, but he's like, this is intense, right? Like, and he said, Dr. Snyder comes back on Monday. And I said, well, listen, if you want me to reschedule, I'm happy to do it. And he was like, no, let's just do this. Let's get this thing done. And we got in and it was great as always. And, Shiloh did her voodoo and I was in and out. My teeth were super clean. I don't know if you can tell from there, but it's like a haircut, but you can't really see it.
Oh, it's
they're
very
really
nice.
Very nice.
There's a little shine here in my eye.
That's right. If you're on the Rumbles or the YouTube, any food you see between my teeth is recent this time.
Yes.
That's super helpful. But that was pretty much the day, man. And then we had a little bit of scouts after piano. I mean, it was just one of those days, the flag football and the piano and the scouts and the OMG.
Oh, yeah. When you're talking about seeing Shiloh and stuff, I'm reminded of, I think it's Mitch Hedberg, the comedian that has passed away. And he talks about the fact, it was Stephen Wright. Yeah, it was Stephen Wright. Sorry,
did he pass away?
No, Stephen Wright's still there. Stephen Wright, he talks about the fact that he had a crush on his dental hygienist. So that's why he would sit in the parking lot and eat an entire bag of Oreos before going to see her. He's like, I'm going to draw this out as long as possible.
Yeah.
Oh, and speaking of that, I got a surprise for you.
Hang on. You're reaching under the desk. Buddy, whatever it is, I don't need to see it.
Oh, yes, you do.
No.
Yes.
Oh, are these the kicks?
Yeah.
Oh, let's see
at that.
Oh, man, you got them.
There. Look, you can see them on the Rumbles.
Even from here, they look pretty sweet. How did I not look at them when you came in here?
Because I hid them.
What's the material they're made of? Is that flesh?
In fact, I think it is. But it's virgin flesh, which is nice.
Do they feel comfortable?
No. They feel like slippers.
Are you okay? That's
they feel
nice.
like slippers.
As you know, that is the shoewear of choice here at 710.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it is absolutely fantastic. In fact, here I'm going to put my headphones down and I'm going to walk into your side of the world.
Oh, are you really?
Yeah.
Well, this is uncomfortable when we do it live on air because then people can hear my squeals of joy. That will be awkward. Billy's coming in with the shoes right now. I'm touching them. They don't burn my fingers yet, so they're new. They're really light, Billy. It's a canvasy material here. Hey, dude, by the way, if you're looking for a radio sponsor, I know somebody.
Cool. And again, I just have to say that, personally, you'll notice that I did not wear them into the studio and then take them off and make you hold on to my stinky feet shoes. So
yeah, what's up with that?
Well, I thought that it would be kind of awkward to say, here, have an item that probably contains some of my bodily fluids. That's just a weird
now
thing.
You make that change. Sure. I don't know what happened in your world last night.
Yeah.
Thank you.
First one, that was a mistake.
Things things right here, you don't actually tie the things.
No, not at all.
That's all just decoration or something.
And do you notice that on the red and white shoe, the eyelet things are blue and then they're red.
Oh,
on the
yeah,
other shoe. Little details.
Look at that. And you got a sweet deal on these, huh? They're so light.
They are. Yeah. They are. Now, again, they're not going to last forever, but
And
for
I'm not going
$31.
to wear them through a 10-hour hike through London.
No.
But I'd wear them around the house.
Oh, absolutely.
Those are fantastic for around the house. Those
they're
look
wonderful,
great.
and they're wonderful for those certain occasions where you need something that's very patriotic but a little bit screwy. And also I was thinking they're totally different between if you do pants or shorts, because pants they're real subtle. And you could do jeans over the top of them at an event or something. People are like, hey, nice shoes, etc.
Yeah.
But then you go with shorts and you're kind of like, nah, look at my stupid shoes.
And they really offset the black socks you wear with the shorts.
Yes, they do.
So
you have to. Yeah, and
especially if you're mowing the lawn.
And your black socks have got to go at least mid-calf. At least, if not higher.
If you can still wear the clip between your, your shirt tail or whatever in your sock, you should pull that off as well. Those are great, man. That's a great deal. Whatever you got on that coupon-wise. Was that another one of those T-Mobile things?
Oh, yeah, it was a T-Mobile thing where they gave me 30% off and free shipping. And I've been watching the silly shoes because, again, I like weird stuff, and I think they're just really cool. And for those certain occasions where you need something that's like, patriotic shoe. Come on, how could you pass this up? And I'd been watching them; they went on sale, so I was waiting. I was hoping that the coupon would come back up, because then when it does, it knocks more money off the sale price.
Okay,
yeah. So that shipped to my house, $31.
Buddy, that's great for $31.
Yeah,
you almost have to purchase it.
That's what I told my wife when she was laughing at me.
We don't need this dinner, honey, because I got these shoes.
Yeah, she was just like, and she looks at me, she goes, of course you did.
But you could distract her with the $3 pizza. But absolutely. I got a $3 pizza.
Yeah, I know, $3 pizza. Yeah.
I saved all this money. That was shoe money I saved right there. Are you going to start a Hey Dude collection?
I have several pairs. So
as
long as they keep one of them, I'll show them, but I won't let you. Well, I guess you can tell they're weird, but they're almost perfectly slippers. They look like slippers, feel like slippers, and I spent the extra money, and I have them lined with sheepskin on the inside, so they're all fuzzy and stuff on the inside. Oh my good
Lord!
So they are like wearing slippers.
Come on, man! Yeah. How much did it cost? To line them with sheepskin?
Well, those cost. It was only like an extra $2 for, because again, I had a coupon.
Not so bad.
Yeah, I had a coupon at the time, so again, I knocked the price off.
Folks don't know this either, but on a weekly basis, usually on a Monday, when I come in, Billy will show me a whole host of things, none of them related to his body.
No,
thank you.
Yeah.
But one of them invariably is a receipt.
Oh, yes.
From wherever you're shopping.
Grocery game.
Yeah, from grocery store, grocery store X. And so Billy's like, look at this. I think this week's was, look, I saved $78. And I'm like, oh, that's an attention getter. Yeah. Like if you save $1 or $2, whatever, right? Oh. But $78, that's over 2 pairs of those shoes.
Oh, yeah. It was $78 and 28% of the bill. And that's funny because
nuts.
Yeah, my wife pays attention to the dollar number and I pay attention to the percentage. The percentage to me is that shows me how good I have been at this game we call grocery shopping. And there were some things we could maximize this week. So yeah, I just rolled some stuff.
Listen, the idea though that your pantry is filled with 37 jars of Welch's grape jelly. Well, I don't know that's a testament to your shopping.
I don't know. Well, here's the thing is what we do have is we have so much cereal. Because cereal is super cheap right now, and I got a lot of Pop-Tarts. I got a lot of Pop-Tarts right now. But it was funny because my kids always
teenage me would have loved your house.
Oh, that's the thing is my kids' friends love the house because again I didn't have a lot of choices of cereal growing up, so I kind of said I don't care. I'm buying all the cereals. Don't care. They don't have to be healthy. Nothing else. It's just one of those things. So I think in the pantry right now we've got 5 boxes of cereal and then another 3 that are being stored downstairs and. All of my kids' friends have come over and they're like, I love your house. And most of them come over and eat cereal because we have all of the cereal. And I will also be the person that tries the new cereals. So when they have the new stuff out there, oh, yeah, that's coming home with me.
They have I still have an old box. They ran the old from when we were kids, like Count Chocula. And the Booba. They ran that last year. Yeah. We ate that box relatively quickly. And for some reason, Hoarder George thought, I should keep this box. And so somewhere in the garage is this box of Count Chocula. And I'm like, what am I doing? I mean, I need to buy about 30 cats now and just live amongst my boxes.
You know who's going kind of crazy right now is the Cinnamon Toast Crunch people. They're going a little crazy.
What do you mean? CTC?
They're doing some other flavors because also Frosted Flakes. They're going a little weird with the flavors, too. They've got a strawberry milkshake flavor out there now.
Who does?
Frosted Flakes. There's a strawberry milkshake.
What's going on with that?
I don't know. There's also a pumpkin spice one that I saw this weekend. That I haven't broken open that box yet.
That is in the zip code of something called food science.
Yeah.
And so I had the privilege yesterday for this video of interviewing a woman on a school board down in the El Paso County, Colorado Springs area, who her prior life before deciding I want to be a mom and I want to do all this others, and then I want to go to the school board, she was a food scientist.
Wow.
And she is directly related to the Hot Pocket. And I'm like, you know what? That's kind. Yes, I mean, it's kind of cool. How many Hot Pockets have been ingested over the planet Earth over the last time? And to think that I'm the one that gave it that taste, however you would describe that, like I am the one that I'm like, that is fascinating. So there's someone like her doing the milkshake frosted flakes or something like that.
I have questions.
We should get her on. Come on, she's a cool cat.
Why doesn't that crisper sleeve work like it's supposed to? How come that is just a lying?
She's not a packaging scientist, Billy.
But that's a scientist as far as how it's supposed to cook, because the Hot Pocket, when you cook the Hot Pocket, you take it out, and then either it is really cold or molten lava. And so you're like, oh, this is cold. This burns. It is awful.
They should have packaging that at least changes colors enough that you know when you've crossed over into burn your fingers off.
Yes,
but that's not her. She's the one that's like, I can make this taste like cat or something, whatever. You know what I mean? She's the taste person. She's a food scientist.
Okay.
I tried to ask her off camera, of course. I'm like, do you guys wear lab coats? And like, do you have like Bunsen burners and stuff? Or
are there food fights in the cafeteria?
I'm like, I want to know what the failed flavors were, because I imagine they're like, someone comes in and says, we'd like to do something that tastes like bacon, but we can't afford bacon. So what can you make out of soil and these bug parts or something like that?
It's like on the Friends sitcom. Instead of chocolate, they had mocklet.
Right. Yes, that's right.
That's what it is. They're with mocklet.
Or when you're going to certain places like, well, maybe the grocery store and you're getting the crab salad, but it's spelled with a K.
Yes,
you know what I mean? Like, I love that K-Rab salad that you have there. You know, they won't let us spell it correctly for a lot of reasons.
And I would also curious, the Hot Pocket thing is, even though they say there are different flavors, how come they all taste the same?
Oh,
I mean, they really do.
That's a punch right to her gut,
really
man. We should get her on to defend herself on this, even though we haven't used her name.
Yeah.
But that makes me also think of the Army back in the day when I had to eat these MREs, meals ready to eat, that come in these polyurethane bags. One, that you really needed a bayonet or something to cut open, and which I think would preserve the food up through today, as far as I know.
Yes.
And they had, this is back before they upgraded the menu. They needed more food scientists, but they would have the worst, in my opinion, was the ground beef patty, dehydrated ground beef patty. And a separate pouch of something called bean component. And I remember sitting around, you know, as we were heating up these little, you know, cups of water or whatever to put them in from your canteen. And I remember saying, guys, think about how low the bar is here, right? Like, we are military people, and they don't feel comfortable calling it beans.
No.
Like, they feel like we can't mislead these guys.
No.
You know, we're going to send them off to die or kill or both, hopefully in the right order. And we better be honest. It's not really beans. It's bean component.
Yeah.
It's
just a piece of the beans. I'm telling you what it is.
The patty is, people would just pitch these things, right?
Sure.
Like into the wild or something.
Throw them at each other.
But you were supposed to take them and dunk them in the cup full of water. And if you couldn't boil them, because many times we didn't have access to, and you had to let it absorb and sort of reconstitute itself.
Like those capsule animals you had as a kid. You drop them in there and the thing expands and becomes
my God. Speaking of gag reflex. Yes, that's it. I'm feeling it right now. Like, it was one of the worst things in the world. Interestingly, one of the best was the chicken a la king.
Really?
Yeah.
I like how they went the chicken a la king.
Yeah. If you just don't look closely at it, you can convince yourself of it. Now, here's the other thing. They went next level when they started introducing these teeny tiny, like, shooters of Tabasco. That masks everything wrong with the meal. So you'd get the chicken a la king, you'd jam that little thing of Tabasco in there, and it was like Christmas.
On the label is chicken in quotes.
Oh, you know, I never even looked to see if it's spelled. I think it has a Q in it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? Because you know, they don't want to mislead the soldiers.
Not at all.
But we needed food. You know what? That's a missing branch from the Army. We've now expanded DoD wide to go with the Space Force. I don't know why we couldn't go with the Food Science Force.
Why not?
Something like that. Military people to drop in.
And the thing that always strikes me is you were talking about being on base in Iraq and how the morale of the base was
Oh my
hugely
God.
dependent upon the ice cream machine
Directly.
working. Yes.
If the ice cream machine went down,
Yes.
you knew it before you got to the dining facility
Yes.
because people would walk out of there like someone had just said, "Hey, your pet dog died back home," and then, it's not working.
And the thing is that knowing that is like the key to the morale on the base, you'd think that they would spend more time on the meal development. The idea that making the guys happy and stuff with at least even Lunchables gives you a little candy inside, even though those things are crap.
It was,
then.
I think I probably told this story before, but it was fascinating because I was so taken aback by the amount of selection of food that first day I was there. And remember, I get there after the surge. So it's a very, if you've been over, it was a very different Iraq. I was very blessed. Going pre-surge was far more Wild West than I was there. But I get there and, it's not like we were walking around in, tank tops and shorts and stuff. We're still wearing body armor and the explosions outside the gate and stuff. But I remember being just taken aback by like all this stuff that you can get. I mean, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And all the guys that had been there, I was a mid-tour replacement, and all the guys that had been there were like, "Hey, sir, simmer down. Simmer down." They're like, "Pace yourself." And they told me this driving from the airfield. They were like, "Sir, we're going to tell you something. It won't make any sense until it does. And that is, in Iraq, every day is Monday."
Oh.
And I go, "Whoa, what does that mean?" They're like, you won't know it until you know it. And then after about 2 weeks of making your way through the dining facility, you realize this is it. This is the universe of selections. And pretty soon now you're trying to think of combinations of things that might somehow change the texture. You could never you couldn't get an egg over easy. There was a regulation that said couldn't have runny eggs at all. So whatever you asked for, they would just nod and smash it into the grill. Like you could ask for anything. There's like,
whatever.
Throw it onto your plate.
That's great.
They had a salad
The illusion of choice.
It was the illusion of choice. The salad bar they had early on, I loved it because I thought, hey, Fat George is going to lose weight in Iraq. And I did. I mean, I must have lost, 25 or 30 pounds because I was in the desert.
Yeah.
And there was really nothing else to do other than either eat well or eat poorly. So the salad bar was my vehicle to eating well. Turns out there was something wrong. I don't want to call it a biohazard, but a whole bunch of soldiers and officers, me included, ended up becoming like human straws for a couple weeks as things just fell right out of you. If you know what I mean, it was, there was a long line to go to the medics thing, and they pretty quickly shut down the salad bar, and we never saw it again. It was just, they were like, well, we can't figure out what's wrong. Burn it. Take it out and kill it.
Yeah. Something was not stored properly and something got contaminated. And I've been there. Those illnesses where you are rushing to the bathroom, but there's a question you're asking yourself as you're getting to that door: which part of my body am I pointing at the toilet first? Because it's going to come out both ways. You just got to figure out what one is a priority at this point.
The other thing is that I don't want people to lose sight of when you think of, hey, I'm going to the bathroom. Please don't think of anything, one, that's been cleaned recently, or two, that's attached to the building or has water associated with it.
Yeah.
We had the straight up, the little green closets. You know what I mean? Like you see, we had those, and we were lucky because for the military law building that I ran, we had our own, and it was tucked behind the building so you couldn't see it from the road, which was huge because otherwise soldiers would be bailing out all the time and coming and, ruining it. So we felt like we were very Beverly Hills to have our own little porta potty in the very, very back. But I got to know that thing intimately over one of the 2-week periods of time that I was over there.
Awful.
There's no like, hey, why don't you go just hang out in your chew, and sleep it off. Like,
no, you can't.
You're still able to move around. Come on, let's keep going.
Okay.
I mean, and I don't want people to mistake this either. I'm not asked to lead patrols out there and take that hill. Okay. I don't want anyone to think that, then Major Brauchler was out there. That's not my job overseas. Okay. I was the chief of military justice for Northern Iraq. That's different. I flew by helicopter, not by convoy. But that's still, it was, I don't know how we got there with the food science and stuff, but great memories.
And we started with the red, white, and blue shoes. Somehow we
got we got there. Maybe they're shoe scientists or something like that.
Yeah.
I didn't even get a chance to ask you, and because we've already blown past our to yesterday. you did a little bit of the Billy magic when it comes to trivia, but I don't know if you're allowed to say you got to run into a special guest.
I know. I ran into a guy that says that he knows you, and he wanted me to give you a message. But then I had to question, is he one of your friends? Because, I mean, the thing for me is that when he was talking about it, I'm like, I'm pretty sure George's parents are married, but I'm not sure what is this. Can I say this?
No, I think I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah.
I ran into your very good friend, Mr. Kellner, Mr. John Kellner, which is nice. I ran into him, and he was really nice, really kind, much more than I absolutely deserve. But it was really cool to see him and the kids.
It's you're one of the 3 people he's nice to.
Oh, good.
Because his wife is one because she's the breadwinner. People don't know this, but John's a kept man.
Yeah.
And you're the other one. There's a
jealous.
third one out there. I'm not really sure who it is. It's nobody in the office, but there's somebody else. It's not me. That's for certain too. There's somebody else out there where if you're the person John Kellner's nice to that isn't named Billy or his wife, would you please text into the show and let us know who you are and why John is nice to you?
Yes.
That's pretty cool, man. Did he
really cool.
play trivia?
His kids were playing at the time.
Oh,
so that's kind of nice. So he was in there, and the kids. So he's at one table with friends, and wife and things, and then next table is the kids are there, and the kids have the cell phones, and so it's a great. And I see a lot of that where
to be clear, this is a bar.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yes. Which I like. I love the fact that he's in the bar, but it's a bar that serves food, and it's a bar that's in a parking lot where it has a jiu-jitsu dojo and a dance studio. Literally within
kids do stuff
literally within 30 feet of the front door. So it is so close. That's what the kids do. Is so he comes in, drops the kids off. He and the friends hang out for a little bit.
He goes
kids
to
come
dance
back.
class.
Yeah, exactly. He does. It's I'm telling you, he looks good in the leotard. Now he's gonna hate me. Now and the kids come in afterwards and they kind of goof around and they they get some food. They play, and the kids immediately ask for the cell phone because it's up on the TVs, and it's fun to play along with. So, it was kind of nice. It was good to see him.
Yeah, man, listen, it's always good to run into the people that you know. And, of course, John's friend of the show. He is the current district attorney for the mighty 18th Judicial District, Arapahoe, Douglas, Elbert, and Lincoln counties. There's going to be a time coming up here, probably next year, we'll have to have a conversation about what the DA's races look like. But a little scary.
Yeah, a little scary.
Nonetheless. Let's cut away for a break here, come back, get a little bit of the uplifting news that Billy finds to make the Thorpe Report, and then we'll downshift into utter unpredictable chaos called You Choose the News. It's George Brauchler on The George Show. You're listening to 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Did you get up this morning wondering what kind of news can I hear that can actually take it down a notch, like a cloud over my head? Well, let's find out from our friend with the Thorpe Report, William.
Yes, nothing but the most depressing and sad things that we have
You need
going
some
on.
kind of music for this. Bum, bum,
Yeah. Or
bum.
like that funeral dirge.
Right.
Has to be played on organ. All right, higher elevations above 9,000 feet along the north part of I-70 could see snow in the next 24 hours. Some places getting at least 6 inches. Winter weather advisory is in place for Park and Medicine Bow mountain ranges above 9,000 feet in elevation. Here locally, we're going to get some wind gusts. It's going to be chilly, a little bit rainy here in Denver. City's probably going to see its first freeze of the season later on this week. Temperatures dropping to around freezing Friday morning, perhaps as low as the upper 20s for Saturday morning. If you're concerned about your sprinkler system or maybe your swamp cooler, get that thing taken care of before it does the freezy. After a nearly month-long trial, we talked about it earlier, the fate of 2 Aurora police officers charged in the 2019 death of Elija McClain is now in the hands of the Adams County jury. We'll be speaking more about that later. Elsewhere, officers are working to develop suspect information after 3 people were injured in a stabbing. Where? At a shelter in North Denver Tuesday evening.
What?
A shelter around 7 p.m. Police were called to a disturbance at a hotel that provides temporary housing for those experiencing homelessness. It was in the 4600 block of Quebec Street. 3 people, 2 adults, and 1 person under 18 taken to the hospital with stab wounds. Unclear how badly they are injured. They are expected to survive. Salvation Army provides case management services for people staying at the hotel.
Would never happen in a micro community.
No, never. So that I'm curious, now Mayor Johnston, that's why I brought it up. Mayor Johnston has talked about there is going to be security in those micro communities, but again, so we'll have to see how that is handled. So 3 people involved were guests of the shelter, and they're working on developing suspect information at this point. 16-year-old boy is being held on suspicion of murder. That's in connection to shooting that killed a 15-year-old boy at Southlands Mall in Aurora last month. The 15-year-old was shot on September 30th in the parking lot of the shopping center. Police say Tuesday, a 16-year-old boy who was wanted in connection with the shooting actually turned himself into police. He was booked into jail on suspicion of second-degree murder and aggravated robbery because he's under 18. Name not been released. Chief Art Acevedo is going to join us here in a little bit. He had a news conference on Monday. It said investigators believe there were 5 suspects in multiple shooters. We'll talk about it with him. 1 person is in jail. Officers are searching for another in connection with a shooting that killed 1 person near an RTD station in Lakewood last month. Anthony Ortiz killed in a shooting just before noon on September 30th in front of Wadsworth RTD station. Police said a suspect, 20-year-old Nathan Ortega, was contacted at a local hospital, confirmed to have also been shot during the incident. He was treated for his injuries and booked into jail on Tuesday, being held on charges of first-degree murder and aggravated robbery. They're looking for a second person in connection with that crime as well. Aurora police are looking for 3 men who managed to steal, this is interesting, $12,000 in jeans.
What?
They stole jeans from Kohl's stores. The suspect walked into the Ironton Street Kohl's location and walked out with handfuls upon handfuls upon handfuls of jeans.
How many handfuls of jeans does it take to get
I don't
to 12
know, but the trio said to have done this routine several times in the last 30 days to 6 weeks. Suspects then load a 2001 gray Honda CRV with the stolen jeans and drive away. That is interesting because obviously whatever the security protocols that Kohl's has aren't doing so much.
Did we catch them?
No, not yet, but they've got pictures of them. But then again, the issue for me is that they've gone there to the same store and done this several times over the course of weeks, not like every few months. Every couple of weeks they're doing this.
These guys are suckers, and then it'll just raise our prices to cover the loss.
Yeah, they will.
I feel like we need to start doing, and I hate to go Middle East here, but that's where the focus is. I feel like we need to take a hand.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
There's part of that where,
but wait, there's another point of this. Then you have bucket of hands out in front of the store.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, or box of hands.
Yeah.
And you just label it that, and it's no one can see into it unless you lift the lid.
Yes.
But it is a constant reminder that steal from us. You may take from us, but we're gonna take from you.
Yeah, we are going to take from you. Yeah, there is idea that I do think there needs to be more consequences for the theft. Although, and we'll have to talk about this at some point. The guy that runs Lowe's said they're not seeing the same type of shrink that they are at other retailers, and part of it he contributes. He says contributes is the layout of the store and it's part of the store design. But you know what he said? The number one.
Oh, I know the answer
tool,
to this one. You should tell us. Yeah.
Number one tool he says that he uses to fight the shoplifters are his employees.
That's right.
Not saying it's some sort of fight club, but he's saying that they find more employees on the floor just because there are more of them wandering around. It provides a sort of peer pressure and actually prevents people from walking in and trying to steal large groups of items, because someone in the store is going to come up and ask you what you're doing and create some sort of a social consequence for that. So, and it's a weird premise, but he says it works.
And they always have 2 employees who have been diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder
Yes.
that they just sort of have tethered to a register, but then they cut those tethers loose. You know, if someone starts to steal, it's almost like that whole release the hounds. You know,
if you hear it, it's like they go, it's code purple. Code purple, section 3. Code
release
purple, section
release
3.
Carl. Release Carl.
Release Carl. And then you hear,
Carl loves human flesh.
Yes. All right. Now, the search for a missing runner in Rocky Mountain National Park has been called off. The 49-year-old is reported overdue September 28th. And so far, they're not going to keep searching for him.
Good, man.
Nope. And a mother in Fort Collins, this is interesting. I'd like to have your opinion on this one. Wants the driver who hit and killed her 37-year-old son in January to face charges. Now, the DA's office said there was enough evidence to prosecute. So the mom disagrees. She has filed a motion. What she's done is, what is it called? It is a motion to compel prosecution.
Oh, that's so interesting. It's legit. There is such a thing.
Yeah.
It's an almost never used law. But I'll tell you, the last time I recall it being used was right here in my jurisdiction before there was a me. And that was my predecessor was the DA. She refused to file sex assault charges on a Colorado buffalo who had sexually assaulted some woman down here. And the judge that said, yes, I ordered the DA's office to prosecute this was none other than Judge Carlos Samore, now Justice Samore, before there was ever an Aurora Theater case. Court of Appeals, I think it was the Court of Appeals, later overturned it and said whatever the facts of the case were, that he couldn't order the DA's office to prosecute. But I do believe the statute, if the judge orders it, can appoint a special prosecutor. And by the way, I'm available to come up there and handle the case. It is almost never done, but very interesting.
Interesting. We will keep our eyes on that one. Well, that's all that I've gotten. I don't know if we're going to have time to you choose the news. We'll have to see what happens here.
We're going to do it. I mean, at some point, you know what we'll do? We're going to do celebrity edition of You Choose the News. We're going to let Chief Art Acevedo.
Oh, yes.
We're going to do that. Chief, if you're listening right now, 1, thank you for finding the station.
Oh, that's
wonderful. 2, and also thank you for physically finding the station since he's coming in studio here. Stick around. It's George Brauchler on The George Show, 710 KNUS. back to 710. It's still the 6 o'clock hour for a few more seconds, folks, so I can't really control what I'm doing or anyone else does. But here's what's going to happen. When we come back, Chief Art Acevedo in the studio. He's going to do the celebrity edition of You Choose the News. Stick around for it. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. It is the 7 o'clock hour, the George Show on 710 KNUS. You know, we are in hour 2 of 4. Charlie Kirk takes over at 10, Dennis Prager at 11, and then, Seb Gorka at 1. But it really gets hopping back at 3 o'clock right here in Denver with Deb Flora. And then from 4 to 7, Stephen Tubbs, who is in, I believe, day 1,000 of his Swan Song farewell tour as he prepares to leave radio. He's threatening forever, but I really feel like this is going to.
He's trying to one up us.
I think he's Tom Bradying this thing.
Well, yeah, no, he's one upping us because today we have a very special.
We do right here in studio.
VIP guest in here, and Stefan has to go and get the governor.
Oh, but hold on now. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
We have right here in the studio right now. We have Chief
there.
Art Acevedo. Chief, thanks for joining us.
Oh, I thought you guys were going to say it's Matt. I mean, you know.
Do you want to introduce your
Matt? Introduce yourself to the world here, as everybody knows you already.
And you have rank, so you got to use that as well.
Yeah, they're on Velcro, but he's good.
Yeah.
Detective Longshore.
Oh, hey, Billy, how do we do that? Say that again.
I got it.
Detective Longshore.
Detective Longshore. That sounds like the name out of a novel, a Harlequin romance novel, by the way. You know what I mean?
A bad novel.
And Stefan does have the governor, but let's be honest.
5 p.m. today.
There's no chance the governor's setting foot in the studios here for a lot of health-related reasons that are meant to protect the governor. But I think they went and recorded an interview with the governor.
All I'm saying is that our guests have guns. That's cooler.
Our guests do have guns.
That's all I'm saying. We win.
Yeah, that's true. That's it. And they are in studio right now. So if things go horribly wrong, either will be protected or eliminated. I'm not sure what that is.
I know exactly what end I'm going to be on in that one.
Yeah.
George, you'll be deputized. On the other hand, this other guy over here in this little
Billy.
He may be held for
absolutely. I would not expect it.
In small unit tactics, we would put him out on point. We'd be like, Billy, get up there about 20 paces.
Or the
just keep going.
Or the listening post.
He's going to be the LP.
Oh, yeah.
Now, listen, we were just going to jump right into the business of law enforcement here in Aurora, since you are the head of the second largest police department in the state of Colorado. Kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
And we'll get there. But we delayed due to things I can only attribute to the FCC and, frankly, Tim Hernandez, that we couldn't get through the 6 o'clock hour with something that's very special for us that we do every day called You Choose the News. Chief, if you're willing, you will be the first celebrity picker, almost like Game Day on ESPN. Do you know what I mean? You will be the first celebrity You Choose the News chooser. All you have to do is pick the titles as Billy reads them. If you're willing, simply give a nod.
Yeah.
He did it. He nodded, or at least he touched his face, and that seems like a nod.
Yeah, that's his tell.
That's his tell right there.
Okay.
He just reached up, and it's a signal, really, to the detective. We may need to run out of here. Just pretend to get some sort of an emergency call.
Yeah.
You know, like click, 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 click. So, Billy, without any further ado, let's get to it. This is a career ender for Chief Art Acevedo.
Yes, it is. We appreciate
another
that you
one.
chose.
Let's go.
We appreciate that you chose to end the career with us today, sir. Yes, it is time for everybody's favorite fake radio news game show. You Choose the News. We have scoured the interwebs for mere moments this morning to find really stupid stories about us humans and given them even more ridiculous headlines. Why? Because for some reason they continue to pay us to do this. Again, George and I are as confused as you are about this entire thing, but we cannot wait any longer. We have a very special celebrity edition already, Chief. Remember, I'll give you 4 headlines. At the end, you get to choose the one that you like. We will go through 3 of the 4 today. Choose wisely. Nice. Headline number 1, Florida man shooting for a record. Headline number 2, real water, real sick. Headline number 3, what's Russian for irony? Headline number 4, were the astronauts complaining? Alrighty, sir. Yet again, your choices are Florida man shooting for a record.
I think I know where we're
real
going, by
water,
the way.
Real sick. Yep. What's the Russian word for irony? And were the astronauts complaining? What is your choice, sir?
Well, you know what? Because I am a patriot and I love the Space Command. Let's see what those astronauts
I thought
are.
for sure you were going Florida, man. I thought for sure you were going to go Florida.
No, the only thing I think about Florida is where's the next hurricane going to hit? That little city of Miami, that little pearl of Miami.
All righty, sir. Here we are going to talk about what is going to go on with NASA, because we are designing brand new space suits for our wonderful astronauts right now, but we have decided to go fashion forward. In a recent statement, Italian luxury fashion house Prada has announced they are partnering with NASA to create the next
What?
generation lunar spacesuits. They said our decades of experimentation, cutting-edge technology, design know-how, and wonderful purses, which started way back in the 90s for challenging America's Cup, will now be applied to the design of our spacesuit technology for the Artemis era. Yes, they're going to be launched into space with only the best in fine Italian luxury. No longer will you hear the spaceman ask, "Hey, does this suit make my butt look big?" Alrighty, sir.
Hold on.
Yes.
Is this going to be the predicate for the sequel movie, The Astronaut Wears Prada?
Yes, it is.
Is
Yes,
that-
that's exactly it.
That's great.
Hey, by the way, does
Yeah.
it come with built-in Pampers so you can
Yes, it
drive from
does.
Houston
Yes.
to Canaveral?
That is
Yes.
a great reference
That
to
is
a
a great
really
one.
wonderful /
Yeah.
scary story.
Yeah,
About
that is
love.
fantastic.
It's about love. It's
Yeah,
really
that was called the Basic Instinct NASA style.
That's good.
Oh my
All right.
goodness.
Your second choice this morning. Florida man shooting for a record. Real water, real sick, or what's Russian for irony?
You know, let's go with Florida.
Yeah, well, Florida. We are going to Ocala, Florida for this one.
Been there.
A Florida man who recently decided that he was annoyed by a neighborhood drone took matters into his own hand by grabbing his firearm and exercising his Second Amendment rights by taking the drone down. Wendell Doyle Goney, 52, is now facing what could be considered a record inside of Florida because this will be his 30th potential felony. Ding, 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 ding. Going for a record. He's going to be having 30 felonies if this one goes through.
Did you say
Yeah.
Denver?
No, I said
Oh,
Florida.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, Florida. I'm so sorry.
Yes, no,
It was
yeah.
really hard to
Yeah,
track.
because here in Denver, at least in Denver proper, the first 3 felonies are free. It's like a punch
That's
card.
right. It's a
Yeah.
felony punch card.
Yes, you get to 15.
Now you're in
yeah.
real trouble,
Yes.
mister.
Get 15, you get a free Starbucks Frappuccino.
How about a
Yeah.
cosign PR bond this time,
Yes.
smart guy?
All righty, your final choice this morning, Chief. Real water, real sick, or what's the Russian word for irony?
Let's go with water. I'm
Yeah.
curious about that. Water.
Real water, real sick. This week in Nevada, a jury is getting the case against the company Real Water. Plaintiffs have a long list of complaints. They say that they got really sick over drinking the real water. What is it? Well, it even includes a 7-month-old boy who was hospitalized with severe liver failure, nearly needing a liver transplant. 69-year-old woman hospitalized for liver failure after drinking the real water. She
Uh-oh.
died while in the
Oh,
hospital.
no.
Yes. Now, what are the jurors weighing for possibly holding them liable for more than $200 million?
Oh,
Well, it looks like the real water contained a secret ingredient. They sold alkaline water that didn't advertise it had hydrazine. Now, you may not be
wait.
familiar with
Yeah,
that,
No,
but
I'm not.
hydrazine is a highly toxic chemical that is found in fuel for rockets and other spacecraft.
Oh my good lord.
Yes, so that was an unadvertised bonus on the real water, and it made people really, really, really sick. Poisonings came to light in early 2021. Local authorities in Nevada realized at least 5 infants and other children had suffered liver failure after drinking
You
the
know,
water.
normally these You Choose the News stories are funny.
Yes.
This one is horrific.
Yeah,
I
you
know.
know, I mean, that's what you sold this. By the way,
Dang.
I thought it was Dudley Do-Right reading the news.
Yeah,
there for a
I
second.
know.
Hey, you know,
Yes. Hey, we got to do it. We got to do it in the game show way. And that is the end of our You Choose the News, a
Hey.
very special celebrity edition. Thank you so much, Chief Art Acevedo. And as always, George is our perennial winner, and I'm a giant loser. But wait, we have a special offer for you today. Yes, since you are listening to the George Show here on KNUS, you can get 30% off at a brand new restaurant opening downtown. It is Dr. Evil's Endangered Species Restaurant. Yes, come in and try the delicious blue whale soup. Red
Oh,
Panda
Jesus.
Burgers featuring rhino bacon. You can't pass up our sea turtle pate, now with penguin crackers. Oh,
Mm.
and everybody goes back over and over again for the elephant and giant panda kebabs. And no meal at Dr. Evil's Endangered Species Restaurant would be complete without finishing it off with a delicious bowl of orangutan sorbet.
Oh,
25% off if you mention the show today.
Oh.
All righty, back to you, sir.
I've got my own favorites. Billy, thank you for that. And that, of
Wow.
course, is the spotted owl l'orange, which is also very, very tasty. And one of the ones you'd be surprised, it tastes just as good reheated. And so that if you have the
Oh, boy.
leftovers,
Oh.
Chief, I don't know if you'd ever eat at a restaurant like that a second time. No, I'm kidding. I don't
Yeah.
know if you did that at all.
I'm not into that wild stuff.
Billy, I like this. We need to do more celebrity picking. If this is the vehicle to get Phil Weiser on the show, let's do it. Let's ask him. He's just coming on to follow in Chief Acevedo's footsteps, and that is to choose the news. If it works, Billy, you're a genius. Now, Chief,
I have a feeling he's not listening to your show right about now.
I don't think he is. I feel like I don't know if you heard, but at one point we'd reached out on a regular basis, try to get him on, and wisely, I imagine he's not coming on the show. But he sent back his press person sent back a response to Billy that said, "We'll come on the show when the Rockies win the World Series." So,
well, we will have to have a seance to have that show by the time they win the World Series again. But maybe we'll be able
next year. Hope springs eternal.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
Next year,
at least we have a great ballpark.
Yeah, well, there's that, and you know who else we have to root for?
The who?
No, oh, never mind.
No, the Broncosauruses. Aren't they extinct or something?
Oh my gosh!
I think NFL football is extinct right now.
I don't. You let the Jets come in. We're 0-3 at home. Like that doesn't happen.
It's bad.
That doesn't happen. How many years have you been here?
8.
8 in a row?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you get it. I mean, with the Broncos thing, I'm doing my math. Were you here the year we won the Super Bowl 50?
That was year 1.
Oh, so you
Best
showed
year
up
ever.
and it was like, yay, Broncos!
You became a fan.
And then we went right off a cliff. And then we went through a series of quarterbacks. A lot of people may not remember this, but for 2 games, Billy was the quarterback during that stretch. It was through a special raffle they held at the stadium, and Billy got it. He didn't do well, but he didn't do as poorly as some thought he would. That's all right. He kept trying to take the ball from one of the receivers. He kept trying to get by, and I don't know why. Nonetheless, let's talk about Aurora. First, I've got my own questions, but overview, since we had you in here last, give us a sense of what's going on in Aurora.
Well, we're still having way too much gun violence in our city, in our region. And I think I was actually with the mayor yesterday. We're going to a briefing somewhere that we won't say where. And I started talking to him about gun violence and the fact that politically both sides of the aisle are wrong, right? I mean, on one side, it's everybody should have a gun and we shouldn't do anything to try to tighten up, the process to access firearms. On the other side, is there no consequences, right? And so until we get serious about holding people accountable, having real consequences. If you display a firearm, here's what you can see: go to prison for 5 years. If you discharge a firearm, it's 15 years, and if you shoot somebody and they live, it's 20 years. And if you kill somebody, we'll see you on the other side. Because a lot of folks don't understand the one thing that these hardcore violent people, the one thing they fear, it's not death, because they feel like they're not going to live to 30 anyway. They don't want to go to prison. Yeah, they do not want to go to prison. And so if there are the felons in possession, right, that have a history, because what will happen if we had those real consequences, they'd be more thoughtful as to when they're going to carry their GATs, right? And I don't mean their group activity ticket, I mean their firearm, right? When am I going to carry my GAT? Only when I'm going to go find the dude that owes me money for a dope rip or whatever. But they won't have them on their possession at all times, because now they don't care. They always have them on them. So when those opportunities show up, they pull the trigger. Where in the past, when there were real consequences, when they were going to go to work, when they were going to go commit the robbery, when they were going to do the retaliatory strike, that's when they'd carry the firearms. Otherwise, they'd stash them in their stash houses.
I would love it if we were as serious practically and legally about misuse of guns as we are about just addressing the superficial stuff with the guns. And when you say possession of weapon by previous offender, that POW charge that we have, you've been here for this too, but the legislature over successive legislative sessions reauthorized tens of thousands of convicted felons to get guns with the blessing of the attorney general and the governor. And it's like, wait, I thought you guys were the let's get smart about who has guns thing. How are you allowing this? Right. And this is the other one. Convicted car thieves who are committing crimes beyond the theft of the car, many of them violent. They're now, if you're convicted of car theft, you can go right back out and buy another handgun under Colorado law. That just doesn't make any sense. That can't help us in Aurora.
No, it doesn't help us anywhere in the state of Colorado or anywhere in this country. And actually, we were just talking about pursuits, Matt and I, out in the parking lot. And there's a national debate going on right now in law enforcement. We have backed away so much from pursuing bad actors
over liability, right?
Right. That at the end of the day, what's happening is that people just opting out. You know what? They're not going to chase me. Boom, off they go. And quite honestly, you nailed it a few minutes ago. People 30 years ago, most of the time we were stealing cars to go on joyrides. We were stealing cars to just go to chop shops, to take them to Mexico.
Yeah.
Now they're stealing cars because they want to go commit violent crimes, and that is a fact. And so, and we don't start really assessing what we're doing. And I'm not saying, because I keep telling our officers, we're pursuing more vehicles. I mean, we're hearing our officers, we're encouraging them to pursue bad actors, but use good sense, use good judgment. It's not a all or nothing proposition. Because let's face it, a lot of times if we don't catch them today, we'll catch them tomorrow. But if we just let them go,
right,
what's going to happen between the time that we let them go and the time that we capture them? You might have somebody that ends up dead. Somebody ends up traumatized. Somebody ends up wounded because law enforcement just doesn't want to take those risks. And we have to have that conversation at the national level, at the state level, and at the local level. And we have to adjust our operational philosophy.
I'd love that. At the state level, we have been having the conversation. The problem is the people that are winning at the ballot box. The conversation is, how low can we go on consequences? And there's this constant dialogue about how the harsher the sentence doesn't deter anyone. And I'm like, maybe not, maybe, but it does a couple other things. One, brings some sense of punishment and justice. And two, where you can't steal a car? In prison. You can't steal a car in prison. I don't think you can. Yeah. I don't know, but I don't think you can. The other part they never talk about is the absence of consequences. Whether the consequences are a deterrent, does the absence of consequences encourage the behavior? And that's what you're describing is the more these guys with impunity go about committing these crimes, and they're right back on the street with their hugs, handshakes, and a ticket to come back to court if they choose to. Why not keep doing it, man? It's like free money.
When you have offenders, that people that are, that's what they do, right? I mean, they just go out and they violate the sanctity of the peace, right? When they tell officers, hey man, I'll be out that door before you even get that report done, and they make fun of our officers, and that's a problem. When the criminal justice system becomes a joke. And what really bothers me the most is that nobody's ever going to accuse me. I think I lost my mic here or something, of being super conservative or super progressive, but you got to be practical, right? And we've lost that. I mean, we've lost the focus on good public policy. It's all about the individual basis, that no matter what side of the aisle you're on, when you get to the extreme ends of the political, you cannot be radical enough for the extreme ends of either political ends of the spectrum, and so that now we're stuck with no one's getting the work done, and our officers are out there chasing bad guys. They're doing their jobs, and yet we're seeing too many of the same people in one door, not the other.
Before we cut away for a break, and you're able to stay in for another segment, okay? Sure. Before we cut away for a break, we've been talking about the stolen cars thing. What are the numbers looking like? Do we have something where we can say, here's our definitive trend?
They've trended downward. We are trending downward. We've had 4 quarters now of most violent crime, just about every category going in the right direction. It's still too much. And the same thing with vehicle theft. They have trended down a little bit. So, but it's still too much. It's too many.
Why do you think it's trending down? What are you doing differently?
Well, I think that one of the things that is positive for us is that we keep reminding the people out here that we can actually put you in jail with our local ordinance if you steal a car or if you get caught with a stolen car here in the city of Aurora. And believe it or not, a lot of time bad actors do risk versus gain analysis. And if I can do a crime somewhere where I'm not going to have the same consequences, the same outcomes that are more severe, I'm going to pick the place where there'll be less, outcomes that aren't quite as severe. And we know that again because in my old city in Austin, when I was chief for almost 10 years, Williamson County was like the Hangum High County, type of thing, and Travis County. Austin's in 3 counties. It's in Travis, Williamson, and I can't remember the one south. They would actually pick the gas station in Travis County to do the deal because they knew they got arrested there.
Goodness.
There would be much less severe consequences. I mean, these are true stories of law enforcement.
Some of the best stories that I got when I was the DA, we'd go up on wires and stuff like that. One of the reasons the Fed dudes loved working with us was we could get them a wire quick. That you got to go through the Department of Justice. It's a week.
Mhm.
We'd go up quick. Guys would come in and tell me, "Hey, man," and I'd tell them, "If you get stories like this, I need to hear them."
Yeah.
They'd get stories where dudes would get pissed at other guys and stuff and say, "Hey, man, did you hear so and so got grabbed up or whatever?" They're like, "I told that dude, don't do anything south of Colfax.
Mhm.
Do not." And I'm like, yay, that tells me we're making a difference,
Yeah.
right? Like if they've
Yeah.
identified that line of
Yeah.
it gets real bad when you get into, they don't know it's the 18th. They just know south of Colfax,
Right.
things get worse. I'm
Yep.
like, right on. That's a touchdown. We had another story. It might've been out of Aurora where the story I was told was, cops step out of the room so mom can talk to the kid, and she starts wailing on him, saying, "I told you never come to Arapahoe County. I told you never come." I'm like, yes, this is exactly what we want. We want to put that up on CCTV and all the cable news networks, all that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Do not come here to commit crimes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of those people don't watch the same TV that we do. Listen,
Yeah.
let's do this. Let's cut away for a break.
Okay.
When we come back, I want to ask you about some of the other things going on with the department. There have been a series of good things and things I'm sure the public wants to talk about. We had some resolution of at least part of something out of Southlands.
Mhm. Yeah.
I know you can't get into a ton of details, but I will ask you for all the details.
Sure.
I'm kidding.
Yeah,
And
good
then,
report.
and then we'll get into some of the other things that are going on. Stick around. In studio, Chief Art Acevedo and his sidekick. Well, there goes the camera.
There goes the camera. Sorry.
Sergeant /
Sorry.
Detective
There we
Matt
go.
from the Harlequin romance novels, and me, George Brauchler, on 710 KNUS.
Why should you buy your next vehicle at Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram? We make car shopping easy. We have a huge inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles. We can even custom order. We make it easy. Easy financing, friendly staff. And when it comes to quality service, our expert technicians keep your vehicle in top shape. Visit us today off of Highway 25 and Plum Creek, or shop online at castlerockcbjr.com. Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. Car shopping made easy.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS, in the studio with two guys, Art and Dave, and, well, frankly, George, right here, talking all about crime and Aurora. You know what? Maybe I should start with the sergeant detective, or is it detective sergeant? That's how they do it in the UK.
It's a fake sergeant for this.
When you say fake sergeant, is it you just do it for today's show, or
Just filling in for the month.
is that it? And then they take the stripes off. Is that what you meant by they have Velcro on them? It's
No,
just they
I
I
rip
mean,
right.
these are the detective stripes.
Those are the
Oh, wait a
detective
minute.
stripes. Yeah.
Hold on. What's on the other arm? Same thing?
Same thing.
Yeah, there's only
I
two
should have said
stitches.
corporal.
There's only 2 stitches on there, though. Just
I thought I saw a third. Well, forgive me for promoting you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of sergeants out there who are screaming, "He's not one of us." He's. What's your sense of what's going on at Aurora? And we've got the chief here. Feel free to be candid.
Yeah.
He said nothing you say can cost you your job this morning.
Maybe not my job, but my position.
Yeah. Well, whatever.
I have a unique position working with the media,
Yeah.
such as
That's
yourself.
weird. I guess that's why I see you at all the media things. That's so
It is,
interesting.
yeah.
What do you see? What are you seeing out there? What are you hearing out there? Because you have that connection to the troops, and maybe, they're chattering in your ear in a way that they don't get to do with the chief.
I don't know. I think there's certainly been a shift in support for law enforcement.
Okay,
Obviously,
good.
we had
In Aurora?
in Aurora.
Oh, that's great.
And I'm only judging by our social media content, right? The people that are on there engaging with our posts and commenting, things like that, has certainly gotten better
Yeah.
over the years compared to what we were. We certainly have a long way to go, though.
Yeah. What does that look like? How do you stay on the good path that you're on?
I think it's the engaging post that we do. It's the posts including our officers, showing the good work they do. We're highlighting our officers with short videos, talking about what they enjoy as a human, right? We want to humanize the people behind the badge. It's showcasing things like that where we're people too.
Yeah.
And I think if we can continue that path and people know our officers away from being police officers, I think that helps.
And has the chief been supportive of your OnlyFans page? Because that too is social media. No, I'm kidding. You should have seen the
Don't get me
look.
in trouble, George.
That look was telling. It was
Well,
both.
I
What are
didn't-
you talking about? And please stop talking.
Yeah, I
at
didn't
the
know you
same
were in
time.
the deep web there. I mean, what are you doing?
It's usually Billy that sends me links to things, and I'm like, I know that guy. Chief, in terms of that, you see it shifting there, at least with the social media, the engagement piece with the community. What is recruiting looking like?
Well, it's looking a lot better. We can actually do our own recruiting now,
great.
so we can put all of the city's resources, department's resources, HR's resources. So we have 33 in the academy right now, total.
What's the goal?
As many as we can get through.
I
the
mean,
door,
but do you have a
right?
number like, hey,
If-
we have a
if I-
target. We
if I
wanted
could
30.
last year we did 35 all year.
Okay. Okay.
So guess what? We are off. If we can replicate that, and I think we are, we've got the city hired a recruiter for HR that is doing a phenomenal job, and if we replicate it, and for the rest of the year, I think we're going to be in really good shape. Law enforcement is just a great career. I've done this for 37 years. When I kept getting calls for other jobs, and they didn't appeal to me in terms of law enforcement leadership jobs, and then Dan Oates.
Suckered you into it.
Dan Oates, and then a guy named Pete that is in our law department that I knew from Texas, who's the chief of the public safety group for the law department. I just think Aurora is a department that isn't getting enough credit. And I think Aurora is a department that's done some great work over the years, and we need to obviously improve like every other organization. It's a constant learning, doing better journey. I just felt compelled to come here and help out. And what I have found is a group of men and women that really care, right? That truly are in it for the right reasons. With these patrol officers, they don't just go and take a report when these violent crime occurs. They're hitting the ground running. They're putting out information immediately. And then to see the deep care that our folks have for this community, that you only hear about where we fall short. The few times, I would add, right, that we have fallen short. But I've gotten to see just such a caring group of people that they deserve the very best, and we're going to continue fighting for them. We're going to hold them accountable when they fall short, because that's what they want. I mean, they want to be held accountable when they fall short, but they also want to be celebrated when they do well. And we had our award show last year that last Friday.
Well, I appreciate the invitation.
It's in the mail. You didn't get it?
But what's mail?
Oh, shoot.
I mean, come on, man.
Yeah. Your email.
2023.
Our electronics haven't been working too well this morning. So
I'd have been there. Please
who knows
put me on the list of the cool stuff.
Well,
for the love of
maybe
goodness.
next year we'll invite you to be the actual MC. We actually.
Who did you have
Don't
this
let
year?
Chris Parente hear that.
Parente. We had Chris Parente.
I could be Chris's sidekick. I could be the guy that comes up and juggles or something.
That would be fun.
Chris is wonderful at what he does.
Yeah, he was funny. He had a great attitude, great
Dressed great.
Yeah,
Did he let you search his car after? Because that's where the fun kicks
No,
in.
we searched him right before.
Oh, did you
make sure there's
really?
no recording devices on him. No.
Why do you have this gerbil? Yeah, I get it. I understand.
He's going to get us in trouble today.
It's stolen. Yeah. A couple questions along those lines. The things that come up these days that get far more attention are a product of some of the bad things that have happened elsewhere. So post George Floyd, every time there is an officer involved shooting, which got attention before, gets like attention on steroids now. And one of the cases, and we talked about this one a long time ago when it happened, was the 14-year-old with the gun that who knew at the time, but ultimately turned out to be some kind of a pellet gun. An investigation resolved with that internally recently, and that became part of the media. Do you feel comfortable telling us what happened with that?
Yeah. I mean, look, it is a tragedy. We cannot I don't think we can underscore strongly enough, loudly enough. The fact it's a tragedy. But the tragedy is, to me, we have a lawyer that yesterday, whatever his, I won't even use his name, who said that he's not surprised at the investigation, at the results because of my statements and all this other stuff. That I had already exonerated them on my press conference months ago, which is, by the way, is not the truth, but that's okay because luckily it's all on video. So I had to respond to him, and like I told, my response was, listen, I stand by the quality of our investigation. I stand by the thoroughness, the objectivity of the CERT team's investigation, the 18th Judicial District. We made our decisions based on the facts, based on the evidence, and based on the law and departmental policy. And if he disputes, there's a court of law. Yeah. Hey, have at it. Take it to court. It to court. I look forward
without
to
mentioning his name. If it's any one of the ones that normally show up on these things, I'm sure there's going to be a lawsuit, and they're just going to hope that the city writes a big fat check because that's just what cities do.
No,
these
it's
days
not. Look, it's not going to happen. So, I mean, my heart goes out to this. This lawyer knows the law. Yeah, he knows the burden of proof. Yeah, he knows what the evidence is. Has a really good idea what that evidence is. And what breaks my heart is for the mom of that young man.
Oh my God.
Who, I remember going to the house and her apartment. Sometimes you go to these apartments or these locations and you go, oh my God, what a disaster. It's a woman that was trying her very best. And what breaks my heart for her is for the rest of her life because of this, I would, in my opinion, unscrupulous attorney. That a toy. It was a toy. No, it was not a toy. He knows that. He hasn't used that word since that first press conference. It breaks my heart because that family thinks that we murdered that young man. Yeah. And
that's the message they're putting out in the community,
right? Too. And so we will stand the scrutiny of the federal government. Whoever wants us, we stand by our investigation.
Just so folks, and I think folks know this, I just want to remind folks that this was a case involving, I think it was 5 total juveniles that we think of. Have we identified our?
They're not all identified yet. We have an idea of a couple of them are, but you know what the biggest tragedy is besides the mom now and the family is that who's talking about how did we end up in a world where
these 5 guys show up with a gun
in a stolen van decide it's a good idea to have what the investigation shows they thought was a real semi-automatic pistol.
That's the part is that they say after the fact now it was a toy or it was a pellet gun. It's like, hang on. Yeah. They wanted the dude they robbed at gunpoint to think it was real, he did.
It was a young lady. It was a young lady. And you know what? She certainly thought it was real. And the sad thing, the tragedy is that we're losing so many young people to violence in this community. That we're no one's talking about that, right? Why aren't we talking about how do we prevent What do we need to do different as a society to change the world? I don't know about you, but at 14, I think I was still playing marbles in the sandbox.
Yeah.
I certainly wouldn't, at this age, I still wouldn't know how to steal a car, right? A van. That is the bigger tragedy that I know what we're going to do. We're going to continue to double our efforts to look at how we can do things, create an environment, create opportunities, especially in the summer for young people, with the business community, so they can have their summer jobs, right? Do you remember your first check when you first got your first job as a kid, or the first time you got that payment because you cut I never did lawns. I got too itchy. I didn't like that. So I got my first check when I was working at Palace Dry Cleaners, being the kid that had to clean inside, right? It empowers young people.
Yeah.
We are going to do something about it as a police department. Our city is going to do something about creating these, because an idle mind is the playground, the devil's playground, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to do everything we can to eliminate idle minds. And that's what we need to be talking about. Again, I look forward to, I welcome that attorney that, the more an attorney does talking in public, the more that they probably don't, they're hoping that public opinion gets swayed. I'm telling you this, I'm a very, by the way, I have put partners in federal prison. The Harding Street raid, I'm the chief that went to that scene and realized in Houston, Texas, that something wasn't right. We've got 2 facing very serious federal charges, murder charge. I mean, sorry, we're going to call balls and strikes. And it's not about which way the wind's blowing. It's about the facts. And I look forward to defending this investigation in a court of law, if that's what he chooses to do.
Do you have the ability to sit through one more break and finish up the hour with us?
Yeah,
or
sure.
You have to go?
No, I have to go at 8.
Yeah, 8 o'clock.
16 minutes countdown.
8 o'clock's great. You know what? This is a perfect time. It's just coincidental that the read I'm about to do is for a guy named Mitch Floria, because his company, which is awesome, is called The Art of Granite. There it is right there. It's almost like the Granite Art, which sits right across from me. The Art of Granite, which is who you call when you did. Billy's nodding his head in sort of almost an embarrassing but respectful nod, like, nice job, sir. Touche. Good one. He's going to be in studio with us at 9 o'clock, by the way. Art of Granite. It's not going to happen now?
No, plans were changed maybe 15 minutes ago.
And I'm now hearing about it now. Plans were changed 50 minutes ago, and I'm being told now.
Yeah, it shows where you are in the rank of how
actually, the chief and Matt knew that he wasn't coming before I did. Fantastic.
Well, we actually called him and warned him, you don't want to Have you been there before?
He heard the You Choose the News and was like, hard pass. And speaking of hard, that granite, wow, the marble, the quartz, all the man-made, the God-made stuff, he can turn your kitchen and your bathroom into something that you're proud of. You invite the neighbors over. You don't actually let them sit down, but you let them see the counter and they're like, wow, did you spend $1 million on this? You said, no, I got a great deal, because Mitch gives you wholesale pricing. And here's the better part. If you tell him you're a 710 listener, a George listener, he will give you the bathroom countertop for free with the kitchen countertop package, or he'll throw the sink in for free with any countertop package. And I got to tell you, as you're thinking about maybe you stick around in your house and you want to finish the basement or something like that, that's the kind of thing you want down there, that little wet bar. Do me a favor, do yourself a favor, call him on his cell phone, which I'm going to do when we get to this break, and demand to know why he's not going to be in studio. 303-386-5919, 303-386-5919, or you can check him out at the artofgranite.com. That's the artofgranite.com. When we come back, it's the chief, it's the detective, and it's the radio guy, George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS in the studio. The chief and the detective and the radio talking guy for the last segment. I wanted to ask you, Chief, there is some good news. There's always good news. It just doesn't get the same coverage. There was a shooting that took place at Southlands. And for folks that don't know Aurora, that's kind of a part. It's right there at about what, Smoky Hill and maybe E470-ish. My kids and I see movies there all the freaking time at that AMC, and we eat at all those restaurants.
Right.
Well, there was a shooting that took place over there, and for a while didn't know who or what. So tell us what's gone on.
Well, we have one individual in custody, one juvenile in custody, and we have a murder charges pending on that individual. I think at my press conference, I said first-degree murder, and my good friend Matt said that the chief misspoke. And no, the chief did not misspeak. The chief read what the bullet point that was provided to him.
You tell me, George, if you're speaking the words that maybe someone else wrote, did you misspeak?
Well, yes, but it is someone else's fault.
Yeah.
You're both right.
The bottom line is our former public information officer here, Matthew Longshore Mateo. Anyway, so he has been charged with murder, so we have him in custody, and he turned himself in the evening of the press conference I had with Francois Bergen, our council member from that district.
She's great.
Yeah, she's a worker. I mean, we have a working council. They actually represent their community really well.
Turning himself in is interesting. It's not unheard of, but it's not the norm. Normally, you have to go out and fish for them. Is there hope in light of that we're going to identify the others involved and bring them all in?
Yeah, I'm confident that at some point we believe we have multiple shooters, and the important piece for the community is that, when we do, I like to do risk. I like to do suspect and victim analysis at the end of a year to get a sense of, who are the victims and who are the suspects. Sure. And when it comes to homicide, especially when it comes to murder, a large, significant number of murders is involving people that are engaging in risky behavior and risky propositions.
Well, that gets me to this final question about this then, and that was this, in your opinion, without getting into details here, was this a random act of violence, or was this something targeted based on some prior relationship? I don't know how else to describe it.
Well, I'll just say this, that some of the media reports were there were kids at the mall that they were there for homecoming activities, enjoying the homecoming weekend.
Yeah. Fun stuff.
This had nothing to do with homecoming. This was a pre-planned meet, and we're not going to say exactly what they were meeting about, but what they were meeting about, again, kids had young people have no business engaging in them, which is sad because we have a young man that's lost his life, and my thoughts still go out with that family. But we've got a lot of work to do. Youth violence is a huge challenge in this country. We keep focusing because we're talking about Aurora and Colorado, but it's a challenge everywhere. I know that there's a gag order in place on the McClain case. I'm not going to ask you about it, but what are your thoughts? No, I'm kidding. I will. I am more than happy to discuss this after you're gone, because I listened to the closing arguments and stuff. We also ran out of time. We didn't get to talk about your great supporter, Tim Hernandez. We'll do that. We'll do that at another time. But did you really have to go there? That guy is just he's not a leader.
Remember, FCC. A
caricature. How's that?
Yeah. In the 30 seconds that I have before the music starts playing, what would you like to say to Aurora before we sign off for this segment?
Hi, we all need to do our fair share in terms of collective safety of our community, and we need to be good neighbors. And we need to take responsibility for our own actions. Too many people are dying on our highways here. Traffic crashes don't discriminate. They don't care where you live. They don't care what you drive. They don't care your sex or anything else. So let's start being a little bit more thoughtful, and especially in the way that we drive out here in Aurora.
Detective, I've got an extra couple seconds. Anything you want to say before your career ends?
Join our team. Join AuroraPD.com.
Oh, look at this. AuroraPD.com.
I may have just saved my job.
Do you get a finder's fee of some kind? Or like if you say that Matt sent you?
I wouldn't take it.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Only the people on the YouTubes and the Rumble saw exactly what took place right there. Chief Art Acevedo, Detective Sergeant Matt, thank you so much for making it in here. We'll have you back. I love having you guys in the studio. Good conversations. Hey, stick around. We're going to talk a little bit about the stuff going on up in Adams County. We'll talk a little bit about terrorist Tim Hamastes, and then we'll talk about some other things going on. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. You are halfway through the Hump Day show. That means that every minute you continue to listen, you're that much closer towards the weekend. Congratulations. My name is George. This is my show, The George Show on 710 KNUS. Great thanks, as always, to Chief Art Acevedo. Dude's the head, and by the way, Sergeant Matt as well. Detective Sergeant, it's actually not even Sergeant anymore. It's just Detective. It looks like corporal stripes on the side. So Detective Matt for coming in and taking time. These guys are part of the second largest police department in the state of Colorado. Busy department. And they figure out a way every month to come in here, usually in person, which I like, and just have a candid conversation. The chief, I'm telling you, listeners, the chief said, hey, man, next time I do this, I want callers. I want you to open up the lines and I want to answer questions from callers, which, God, isn't that refreshing? Most of the time you ask someone who's a public figure, whether they're elected or appointed or whatever, and you're like, hey, the public would like to ask you questions over the radio, and they get all vapor locked and verklempt. Not this guy. This guy's begging for him. In fact, I think he was a tiny bit disappointed we didn't do it on the show. There was just too much to cover and too much banter. And in part, it was because we had our very first celebrity You Choose the News at the top of the hour, which was great. So Chief Art Acevedo, Detective, I'm going to say corporal, just based off of the rank. And if you're in the military, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like the two chevrons there, it just screams corporal. And Detective Matt for coming in here and making us smarter about what's going on in Aurora and just being so accessible to us. Now, the case I referenced at the end of the interview, but that we really couldn't get into details about because there's a gag order by the court. I totally appreciate that. Even if there wasn't a gag order, you know, Chief Acevedo would likely and smartly, dude's been doing this a long time, say, I just got to wait until the case resolves. I'm just not in a position to talk about this until all of the prosecutions are over because it wouldn't be fair. And he'd be right to say that. So that doesn't apply to me. So I'm happy to continue to tell you what I observed watching and listening to the closing arguments yesterday. Now, the jury's going to return this morning. I don't know which time, 8:30, 9 a.m., something, maybe while we're on the radio, likely, I think, on the radio. And they're going to start the deliberation process. So yesterday, after jury instructions were finalized on Monday, I didn't hear the beginning of it, but I did catch the end. The judge read through some, 38-ish jury instructions and then a series of verdict forms. Now, as much as jurors want to pay attention to all those words, it's nearly impossible. They're given copies of the instructions. That's hugely helpful so that they can go along and they're allowed to take them back into the deliberation room to consider them. And that's exactly how this goes. So they've seen the presentation of evidence, right? They've had the opening statements. That's not evidence. That's just sort of saying, here's what's coming. Then they had the presentation of evidence. Defense doesn't put anything on. They rest last week. And now each attorney, I guess the government and then the two defendants each have an attorney that gets to stand up and argue, here's how the evidence you heard about matches the law. And this is why either beyond a reasonable doubt they're guilty or we didn't achieve beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the whole point of closing argument. You get to talk about what the evidence meant, what evidence was missing. You get to put your spin on it. Now, keep in mind, there are 3 attorneys on the government side. There's one guy who's a 7-year white-collar prosecutor from the AG's office. And then there are 2 dudes I've described before. One, they're all both partners in some big silk stocking giant law firm that has international presence. One of them's out of Chicago. He did the opening statement. One of them is from Los Angeles. He did the opening closing argument. And you sit there and you go, wait, did you just say opening closing? That sounds like jumbo shrimp. I get it. But here's what happens. When the prosecution gives a closing argument in a criminal case, because they have the burden of proof, and that is the burden to convince the jury that beyond a reasonable doubt, these guys at the other table committed the crimes they're accused of, they get to go first. And they get to go last, which means rebuttal to whatever the defense does in closing. So when I say opening close, I mean the very first closing argument that they're going to hear is from the partner of the big civil law firm out of Los Angeles. This is the one I described to you before, who on the website brags about, I think, 20 or 25 jury trials over a 35-year career, which is just, I don't know, man. That's just such, unless each of those trials is 2 or 3 months long, that's just not very much trial experience. and he's also got all the big clients, right? Like the Home Depot and Shell Oil and 20th Century Fox and all that stuff. So this guy gets up and he goes to give the closing. Now, as you can imagine, if I've described the opening statement as kickoff to the Super Bowl, this is like what takes place after the 2-minute warning. Like, this is it, right? Like, there's the clock matters here. There's not a lot of time left. You're at the end of the game, so to speak. And if it's a close game, this is where you got to punch it in the end zone and seal the victory, or maybe you give the other chance to walk away with a steal. And depending upon how you viewed the evidence in this case, you could view the people in the lead as either the defense or the prosecution. I got to say this. Once again, this guy begins in a way that I don't find completely compelling. And I instantly, as I'm watching this on my phone and listening to it, I'm thinking to myself, it feels scripted and rehearsed-ish. Like, I can't tell if he practiced it out loud, but it feels scripted and rehearsed. And he has a very specific delivery. Now, if you can picture it, he's standing at a podium that's about, I don't know, 10, 15 feet from the jury box. They're completely off camera. He's standing there and he's got his, I guess, closing argument or notes or whatever up on the podium, and he's standing behind the podium. I don't like that as an advocate, whether I'm the prosecutor or the defense. And here's why. I don't want anything physically between me and the jury, because in my mind, there is a subconscious barrier there that just keeps me from being more accessible to them. And it's the difference between talking to someone over a counter at a bar or at a fast food restaurant and talking to them where there's nothing between you but air. Picture that. There's just a different kind of communication that's taking place there. Nonetheless, this is a guy who's wedded to be behind the podium. Now, I would have said it could be that the judge ordered them to do that, but based on seeing what some of the other attorneys did, my guess is he said you have to stay near the microphone, but did not say you have to stay immediately behind the podium. And we'll get to that. I was quick to be like, hey, I'm just not sure how effective this is going to be because the presentation is at a certain level. I may have told you this before, but if you're doing trial work, a rule of thumb, and it's not hard and fast, it's not every situation, is that you try to be the opposite of what the person that went before you is. And so what I mean by that is, in a person's crime, if the prosecutor gets up and thunders away at a high level of emotion, if I'm the defense attorney, I don't want to match that high level of emotion. One, I think it's grating, and I think it wears out the jury. I think what you want to be is the opposite of that. And so you come forward and you become a much more, it doesn't mean emotionless, you're just a more measured, intense voice of reason. And then whatever happens in the rebuttal, who cares, right? And this is something else you should know. All young prosecutors think rebuttal is the best part of the trial because now you get to say the last words in the trial. I believe that as a young, inexperienced prosecutor. And then at some point you come to the conclusion that rebuttal, not that big a deal. I mean, it's important. If it's true rebuttal, all you're doing is responding to things that got brought up in the closing argument of the defense. But for my money, the case largely gets won. I'm just telling you my experience, no science behind it, after voir dire and opening. As long as the case presentation matches up to the story that you told, you're pretty good. The next best part to hammer home that win as a prosecutor is in that opening close. That's where you set the table for the defense. And the defense is either going to match what you put up in that opening and respond to those things, or they're going to go a completely different direction. In rebuttal, you get to say, hey, I guess we're not going to hear any response to the blankety blank Blankerson or whatever. So this guy starts off and he's got a very measured, deliberate pace and tone. The words are good. It's well crafted and it's well organized. And the timing is good, interspaced between the arguments he's making. He's backing these things up with clips of the body cam and things like that. When I say well organized, he gets to the point where he's addressing each of the words that have to be defined that fit within the charges. I thought it was methodical, and I'd have to say about a third of the way in there, I changed my mind. And I thought, this is effective. It's not as effective as it could have been. It's certainly not the same delivery or style I'd have done it, but I thought, okay, this is effective, right? Like if this is jury, if you want to convict these guys, if that's what's in your gut right now, and that's what I think happens. I think by the close of the evidence, jurors pretty much know what they're going to do. They're not sitting there confused like, I don't know what to do. Because if they are, they're acquitting. But if they sit back there and like, I know what happened here. Your closing is giving them the tools they need to go back and feel really good about engaging in a conversation about what's on the elements in the instruction for the charge and voting guilty. And this guy did that. And I thought he did it very effectively, just differently than I would have done it. That part ends. Then Don Sisson from Elkis and Sisson, longtime firm that does a lot of high-level work representing police officers, FOPs, all this other stuff. This is not uncommon to them, but my guess is they haven't had a case that's kind of this high profile or has had this attention in a while. And both of the partners were on the case. Reed Elkis had done the opening. I talked to you about that back when it happened some weeks ago. And then Don Sisson did the closing. Don is good at what he does, but again, I wasn't thrilled with the way he began. He clung to the podium. His body positioning, I think, is just, it's a small window dressing looking thing, but I think these things all matter at a cumulative level. So if you can picture Don, tall, good looking dude, West Point grad, stands up there and because he's taller than the podium by a bunch, grips the podium with each hand. So he's leaning over a little bit and he puts his foot up on the little ledge on the back of the podium. And it's just an interesting sort of relaxed, maybe in my opinion, too reliant on the podium, relaxed body position. And he begins about the first 5 or 10 minutes. And I think each side was given of the defense was given like 30 minutes or something like that. And I think that the prosecution was given an hour. And the guy from the LA law firm went about 25, 30 minutes. So Don's going to go for about 30 minutes. And about the first 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, it seems to me that Don is reading. And he keeps looking up while he's reading. It's not just straight staring down at the podium, but he's reading. I just think that's incredibly ineffective when you are dealing with a compelling emotional person's case where you're talking about the liberty of guys who are accused of taking the life of another human being, especially in this setting where it's not, hey, they killed a drug dealer or they killed a burglar or a wife beater or anything. They killed an innocent kid, 20-something, on the side of the road. And there's a whole lot of reasons why it happened. I'm just telling you, with that dynamic, in my opinion, you need to have that moment where you're standing to the side of the podium. There's nothing between you and the jury, and you're making as much eye contact as possible as you tell them, Officer Rodema, and I can't tell if he's Mr. or Officer. One of them's still a cop, one of them's not. Rodema did not kill Elija McClain. You got to have that moment. And there wasn't quite that moment to begin with. But I thought Don was effective. I thought once he got away from the notebook and once he got away from reading it, he made solid arguments to address the issues that had been raised throughout the trial by the government. And I'll give you an example. One of the things he points out, and I thought that this was important, was there are 15 people at that scene. 15. And you got to hear from only a handful of them. They didn't call anybody else. And you know what? Out of every single person at that scene, none of them said that what my guy did was wrong. None of them said, and it wasn't my guy, he used his name, and I'm just giving you George's synopsis of it. None of them tried to intervene because they didn't think that he was inappropriate for the situation and for what had taken place. And, they highlight some other things about the bizarre nature of the words and the conduct of, and this is not to impugn the victim. I'm not blaming the victim. I'm saying for cops that work in the most dangerous part of Aurora, you get called out to a suspicious person and roll up on a guy wearing clothes that seem inappropriate to the setting and the season. And one of those things is a mask. They got to contact him. Government said this isn't about whether they should have contacted him. That was fine. They say what happened when they went hands-on is the issue. And that's really what the case is. The other part is that I think what the government wants to say is It doesn't matter who did what or who didn't do what. They're both guilty because they were both there as participants at one level or another throughout the ordeal, and that ordeal led to the death of Elija McClain. The defense wants to go, hang on. My guy did not do the chokehold that started the process that the experts described as the acidosis and all this other stuff. My guy didn't do this. There was a higher ranking officer on the scene who didn't intervene or do anything. The paramedics showed up. They're the ones that decided to inject him. You should know that the government's pitch on why the cops are good for the death, even though everybody agrees the ketamine led to the death, was that they didn't tell the paramedics that Elija McClain had said repeatedly, I can't breathe. And had they told the paramedics that, they believe the paramedics would have taken different steps. Now, we won't know that because the paramedics aren't going to testify. They got their own criminal charges against them. They're going to cling to the Fifth Amendment like anybody else would. So that's their argument, is the paramedics were misled by the police because the police on scene didn't give them all the information that they had observed about this guy. If you ask me, that's incredibly weak, incredibly tenuous. But is it enough to make a jury that's inclined to hold cops accountable? Is it enough for them? Could be. So Don does, I think, a decent job. He ends, and now Harvey Steinberg gets up. Harvey, longtime, big-time defense attorney. He represents Broncos and Rockies and a bunch of other folks, and he also gets brought in on a bunch of big cases, and he got brought in on this one on behalf of former Officer Rosenblatt. Harvey is not a read a closing argument guy. Never once have I seen him read from anything that wasn't a piece of evidence where he wanted the jury to see him read from a piece of evidence. That's just not this guy. This dude's very good at what he does. He's very colloquial. He's very comfortable with himself and with the jury. And so he's the guy that walks around. It was a little harder to hear Harvey from time to time because he would stray a little bit from the microphone, and he's walking around far more conversational. It wasn't quite as preachy as the other two. It was far more conversational with them. One other thing about Don, and if I were talking to Don, and I have a ton of respect for Don, one technique that he uses that I'm not a big fan of is he asks a question and then answers it right afterwards. Did they do blank? No, they didn't. Did they say blank? No, they didn't. Did this person do this? Yes, they did. I'm not a big fan of that. I think it addressed some of the good points. For me, it happened enough with repetition that it was distracting for me, but I know I'm a little bizarre in this. So Harvey gets up, he does his conversational thing, and he stands up and he doesn't say, hello again, I'm Harvey Steinberg, or ladies and gentlemen, none of that garbage. He starts right away with, let me tell you a story. And in that tone, he begins to uncover the evidence in a way that leads him about 20-ish minutes in to saying that really what the story is that they needed a scapegoat. They needed a scapegoat for what happened, and they picked the lowest ranking, least experienced, least involved officer to be part of that scapegoat, to be one of those scapegoats. And I thought that was a pretty damn good theme. The concern that I have is he also pitched the idea of, hey, this is like going up against City Hall. Remember in the old movies and all this other stuff? My concern about analyzing all of this is I can give you my perspective from a technical experience standpoint watching it, but not being in the courtroom and not being able to see the jury through certain portions of the trial and not being able to see how they reacted to each of these gentlemen that made these arguments, I'm flying blind here. I don't know. So I think these are compelling things. Harvey tells this story and he makes some more good points. And my gosh, man, he hammered home what we talked about on this show about, remember the last expert the prosecution puts on? They don't just go find some, top of the charts, fantastic, super qualified medical examiner from somewhere in America. They find the guy who's launching a podcast based on his book, which is premised on the idea that black men are being murdered by white police officers. And we just don't have the numbers to back it up. They bring on that guy. He makes a ton out of that. I think that's compelling. But again, without seeing how the jury responded to his testimony, without seeing how the jury responded to Harvey's comments, I can't tell you. I just, when I sit back and think about this case, and by the way, there was a rebuttal close. It was the guy I told you about who had done like some 4-hour closing in Douglas, where retired Judge King had said, I've never put time limits on a prosecutor before, but if you ever come in my courtroom again, I will. That guy was told, hey, you've got 30, 35 minutes left. He still ran overtime. I swear to you, at one point, the judge said, you've got 5 minutes, counsel. He kept going. Judge gives him way more than 5 minutes and says, counsel, you're out of time. He went another 5 minutes. I'm just telling you, this guy, there were so many words he wanted to get out. And so he ends and the jury gets the case. Judge gives him the final instruction, and he swears in the clerk, you're not to take these people anywhere but here, and you're not to talk to them about anything but this, and you're not to let anybody in, all that stuff. So that's what they're going to do today. And I've had a bunch of people reach out to me. What do you think? What do you think? And I don't know. And it's not because of the presentation of the case. It's not that at all. It's not even because I think they're guilty or I think they're not guilty, and I've said this before and I keep repeating it, but for police contacting Elija McClain that day, I think he's alive today. But that is not enough to get to criminal liability. But you ask me to assess what the jury's going through here, and I tell you, I have no damn idea. I've never served on a jury. They continue to blow me away. They continue to surprise me. And sometimes it's a dynamic that exists that's kind of latent until you start doing the negotiations. We find out about that through the post-verdict interviews with jurors. Sometimes it's a single strong individual that could, like the 12 Angry Men thing, you could get that. You just don't know. And you don't know what piece of evidence they cling to. And you start to ask yourself questions like, if I'm on that jury, no matter what I think, am I strong enough to risk being one of the jurors identified as the jurors that acquitted the cops who killed Elija McClain? That is a real pressure. And I hope they address that in jury selection, but you can't ever know until you're at today. So all the alternates, I think it was 14 people total, 12 plus 2. The 2 alternates will be told, we don't care about your opinion right now. Go home or hang around or whatever. Don't read any news reports. Don't talk to anybody. We may need you. And what that means is one of the jurors, they go into jury selection tomorrow. One of the jurors gets sick or has an emergency or gets hit by a bus or runs away or whatever, and they can't serve. Then you can go get one of the alternate jurors and you have to restart deliberations, but you have the ability to get to 12. Unless the defense waves down to 11, that will never happen. So they're going to go into the room and they're going to start reading the instructions. And first off, by the way, they're going to pick a 4-person. I teach this stuff. I've been teaching this stuff for over 20 years at DU. And I can't tell you with any great certainty, I know every time who the 4-person is going to be. I think I know, but I don't. In fact, up until Aurora Theater, I would have said I'm very good at identifying follower jurors. And that's important because you want to know with your limited number of strikes, is this juror the kind of juror based on personality that I can perceive here? Are they going to rock the boat? Are they going to upend the apple cart? Are they going to stand between a majority, in fact, maybe everybody but them verdict? And I'm pretty good at, I would have said I'm 100% on that up until Aurora Theater. So I've got that problem there. So I don't know the answer. I could see, given the emotion of the moment, the coverage of this case, the mood of the community, I could see these guys being convicted on the evidence that was provided. And do I think that evidence is sufficient to support that conviction? I do, based on at least what was argued and what was made here. But should they be convicted? Folks, listen. We've analyzed this case over the course of weeks using body camera that the government spent over $125,000 enhancing. And we've analyzed it frame by frame, second by second. This event took place in mere minutes. And these cops that were on the scene don't get the benefit of any single fact that came out after Elija McClain dies. Not a single one. And so to try to take that moment in time with the experiences they have, the information they have, the way Elija McClain presented, the decisions that were made kind of based on other things that were said, like, for instance, Rosenblatt, the least experienced guy there, Rodema or somebody goes, hey, dude, he just went for your gun. Now, he didn't feel it, but what do you do? I mean, Harvey brought this up. What do you do? Go, I don't believe you. I mean, in that setting with that guy that you trust with your life every other minute that you're on the shift, that dude says he went for your gun. You guess what? That dude went for your gun. So in that moment, with the things that happened, and then the paramedics show up and pump him full of a greater than therapeutic dose, a lethal dose of ketamine, are these guys good for his death? I don't think so. I don't think so. But they could still be convicted, and they could still go to prison, and I think it could still survive appellate review. And that's just the system that we have. But I think there's going to be a verdict before the end of the week. It wouldn't shock me entirely if it came back today, but in no way do I believe this thing, unless it's going to be hung, there's no way it goes beyond Friday, because jurors are going to be like, sweet Jesus, we've been at this thing now for a month, and I just want to go home. I just want to go home and be done with this. And usually it's that Friday dinner time kind of verdict that you're looking at. But I could see it happening today. I could see it happening.
I know you're wrapping down, George, and we get to take a break. But one of the things, and maybe, I don't know if you want to address it before or afterwards, one of the things that we're talking about off the air is the mindset of the juror saying that they return not guilty. And then for the rest of their life, when they have the conversations with friends and family who weren't in the courtroom, who didn't get the privilege of seeing all the evidence and seeing how the prosecution did or did not make their case.
Privilege/burden.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that they weren't involved in it. They don't have all of that knowledge, and they aren't. And again, the court of public opinion is different than the court of law, because court of public opinion can bring a lot of different things and circumstances and emotions and feelings into it versus what happens in the courtroom. And it's going to be, we were talking about, probably very difficult for a juror to be able to walk out of that courtroom after rendering a not guilty verdict and having to, I struggle with using the word justify, or at least explain is probably a better word, explain why they voted that way to their friends and family for the rest of their life, because this is something that is noticeable enough and noteworthy enough that if it comes up in conversation, they're going to talk about it. How does that weigh on them?
Buddy, that's one of those questions that you can try to put yourself in that position, but you can't know unless you've been there. But I'll give you this little reference point to suggest what that pressure can do. The juror that hung us up on death on the Aurora guy, nobody knows who that person is to this day. They have never gone to the media. Nothing has ever been revealed about who they are, what they were thinking, where they've gone. That person made the decision that they thought that was best, that ran against the other jurors in there, and then they just simply slipped away and disappeared. No, and is that a product of the pressure? Like, because you think you've made a controversial decision, and so you go, I don't know. I mean, I don't want anybody to vote for or against conviction because they're worried about the public's response afterwards. That would be an injustice. That would be an injustice.
Even with the public, and understanding that person just disappeared and didn't do any interviews or anything afterwards. I think the leverage in not necessarily the public, but some of the deeper leverage has to do with those interpersonal relationships, like sitting across the dinner table with your significant other and having to explain that, or explaining it to your kids, or explaining it, or, at a Thanksgiving table to friends and family. Because sometimes I think that peer pressure of the closer in circle of your friends and family can be greater than the peer pressure of the public.
You know what? There's a point to that too. And I just thought of this. For that juror in Aurora, one person can dictate the outcome. Because it's a sentencing. If it's not unanimous, it becomes life. If you're going to acquit here, part of your answer gets to be, it wasn't just me that thought it. There were 11 other people who sat through that trial that thought the same thing I thought. And we came to the conclusion collectively. So you can give your rationale, but you're not off on an island, You're off on an island if you hang the jury. And I don't know if we ever get to know who hangs the jury if that happens. And by the way, if they hang this jury, depending upon the vote, I don't know if it gets retried or not, because this thing was a big deal. But nonetheless, we'll know this week, is my guess. Hopefully we'll be on air at some point that we can comment on it this week. And I know we went long on this. I was going to do a read, but I got to cut away for a break here. I've 6 a.m. this right here without all the good, funny stuff that takes place in 6 a.m. Stick around. We'll get back to it. If you have questions, by the way, about the case, about the procedure, let's ask the DA. Give me a call, 303-696-1971. Happy to entertain your questions on this. You don't get this anywhere else in the media, folks. You just don't get this kind of analysis. Stick around. George Brauchler on the George Show, 710 KNUS. Prince, right back here on 710. Prince George, right back here on 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here. Some of the text. Let me just start by saying this, though. And I had a conversation with Billy off the air. You know whose brain I'd love to pick on this, presuming he had the time in his busy schedule to watch this, is Dan Caplis. No joke. Dan's a friend. You know from past things that I've said that I used to work for Dan back in 2005. Back when Bobber was just graduating law school, and now he and Bobber are out there rocking it on the civil stuff. But, you know, Dan's been doing courtroom jury work for decades, and it would be, I think, interesting to hear his take on this. Because this is a guy who makes eye contact with jurors over a multitude of issues that are different than the ones I make eye contact with jurors over, and get to see a different kind of presentation. I would love to get him on the air just to say, here's what I heard in the closing, or here was my take on this evidence, or here's what I think the dynamics are. Because when I talk to you about it, I'm not giving you the right answer. I'm giving you the best answer. No, I'm kidding. I'm giving you my answer. And my answer is just based on my experience. I've been doing this for a couple years now. I think it's 28, a couple years now. And I've done a bunch of big cases that have different dynamics to them. But I can be wrong and people can disagree with me. In part, that's what's beautiful about radio. But one thing about trial advocacy is there is no single right answer to presentation of the case or the arguments. There just isn't a single right answer. In fact, in some ways, you judge the rightness of your presentation by the verdict. And that's also false, because I have seen prosecutors who did an okay job at prosecuting win a case. And not that they shouldn't have, but they win a case, whereas the defense may have put on, man, it was a fantastic defense and such great argument. And I sit there and think, that woman or that man, dang, they know what they're doing, and they lose, right? So that isn't the difference maker on a case where the evidence is overwhelming. It becomes a difference maker on the closer cases. This is a closer case in my mind. The arguments here are more nuanced. I mean, there's just silly stuff and silly, maybe the wrong word. There's weird stuff that took place, like indicting on a crime of violence when it's actually already kind of subsumed into the charge, and they ultimately had to dismiss it. And we talked about this on air, and they came back and said, you know, things like, well, everybody charges a ton of things with grand jury, and then they whittle it down before they go to trial. That's fake. That's not real. That's what you say when you've overcharged. And then they charge criminally negligent homicide with manslaughter, even though criminally negligent homicide is already a lesser included of manslaughter. Just little things like that. My guess is Dan wouldn't know or care about that piece of it. But the part that Dan would get is the storytelling presentation part. My best guess is Dan has never, or at least within the last couple decades, stood up either at opening or closing and looked at a jury and said, hello, folks, my name is Dan Caplis, and this is a roadmap to the, I mean, he's just not that guy. He's a storytelling guy. So I'd be interested to know his take sort of on the stories that were told. Maybe we can make that happen. I told Billy, I'm like, could we get Dan on? Do you think? And he said, well, there's probably some hoops to jump through. And I'm like, Dan's not a jump through the hoops guy. Dan is a guy that pushes the hoops over and just does it, you know, like, so when I say that, that's my way of also saying, if you're looking in the civil arena for someone that understands how trials work and how to convince jurors of the rightness of their case and the justness of it and the outcome, justice. Good Lord. Dan Caplis and Babar Wahid are those two people. I mean, Dan's just been doing this for so long. I think if he had more time, he would have been able to watch more of the stuff that I did, but he's just so busy out there fighting for his clients. If that's the kind of expertise you want with your case, there's someone that can teach this stuff, that can coach the stuff to the people that are going against him, you want to call Dan Caplis. You can check him out online at dancaplislaw.com. Caplis is Caplis. You can check him out online. And frankly, that's a good place to go to see some of the accolades. Also isn't the right word, because they're not award hunters unless that award is a jury verdict. They're out there getting results, and they put that stuff up there, and it matters because there aren't a lot of metrics where you can decide, is this firm great or not? Well, 5 back-to-back multi-million-dollar verdicts, that feels like a pretty good metric, right? Like if you're out there thinking, can this guy ring the bell for me? You can also give him a call at 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551. Billy, we got to reach out to DJC and just see if we can. I have no idea what the Salem, the other guys across the street, what frankly don't care about any of that. I just think it would be a great interview to have that conversation if he had the chance to watch it. That's the other bummer about this too. This thing got live streamed, but the court put out an order. You couldn't record it to like post it in its entirety. And maybe he'll come off of that after the verdict or something. So you can't really go back and watch it. If you could just go back and watch it, we could have a different kind of conversation. I had to watch it live to get here. Somebody texted in, yes, please get Dan Caplis on. I love him. That's so very nice. Here's we have a caller on the line. Let me go to this right because we love the callers. Be part of this thing. 303-696-1971. Well, let's do Jim after the break. I forgot how long we went. Jim, stay on. If I do this now, then I'm going to rush through. I don't want to do that. Let's do this. Come back. I'll give you as much time as I possibly can before we cut away here. Let me do this. Nope, we're just going to cut away. We're going to come back, and I'm going to figure this out, Billy. I'm going to figure this thing out. It's George Brauchler on the George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Right before we get to Jim, and there's another line open at 303-696-1971. Saw something in my little news feed today. It was this oracle of real estate who said, real estate prices are about to crash in these 4 states. So, of course, I quickly look at it. Nope, it ain't Colorado. There's no chance. It's still a super competitive market. Interest rates aside, there's just less homes than there are people who want to move here or move around the state and get them. It's a hard thing, right? To try to sell your home and buy your home. You don't have to do it alone. You don't have to do it with someone you see on a park bench or on a bus or anything like that. Not that there's anything wrong with them, but you can go with somebody that you can trust. And we're going to get Gay here in the studio. I can't remember if I don't think it's next week because I'm out, but it's very, very soon. Gay Ribble and the Empower Home team, they're the people that shake your hand and tell you, listen, here's our agreed upon price that we're going to sell. You tell us. If we can't sell it for this, we're just going to give you the money to make up the difference. Who does that? I mean, these are people that obviously the dollars in their pocket are not the bottom line. It's the happiness in your heart and you and the home that matters to them. And whether it's selling your current home for top dollar or getting into the dream home or whatever the next home is, in this competitive market, they're the ones that do it. You can check them out at gayhasthebuyers.com. Gay is Gaye. Gayhasthebuyers.com, or you can call them at 833-301-SOLD, 833-301-SOLD, as promised. Jim from Aurora, you're on 710. Jim, what do you think?
Good morning, George.
Hey, sir.
Listen, I got a quick question for you.
Yep.
When I heard your whole dissertation there earlier, I guess my question to you, these people that are being charged are employees of Aurora?
They were. I don't know if one of them is, but they were. That's for sure.
Okay. But isn't there something in there that if you're a public servant, such as a police officer, a firefighter, or EMT, that if you did something, I mean, unless you're incompetent, don't they look at it defaulting and say, well, you did your best, instead of thinking you did totally opposite of what most people would do? Thus far, I haven't heard that these cops did something so egregious that they should be charged. Am I missing something?
Well, you missed a little bit of this. If I'm taking on the government's role, I say, hey, listen, we put on a bunch of evidence to talk about the training they receive when they go hands-on. And it includes things like body positioning when they're on the ground, checking on them, times when you need to check their pulse, if they complain of not being able to breathe. They had all that training and they followed none of it. And that is reckless in our opinion. That's what they're going to say. That's reckless in our opinion. It caused this young man to vomit in his mask. He breathed in the vomit. It caused him to aspirate. It compromised his breathing in such a way that he became ultra vulnerable to the overdose of ketamine. And all these things combined led to his death. But to answer your question, in the civil world, at least the state level, we used to have qualified immunity, which is kind of what you're talking about. It still exists at the federal level. Well, that went the way of the dodo with the legislature post George Floyd. In the criminal context, there really isn't anything like that. There isn't like, oops. It's always in the context of what you knew, what was going on. And more often than not, and we ought to cheer this, not in 100% of the cases, but more often than not, the decisions that cops make, even if they result in something that had they known everything, they might have done it differently, turn out to be the ones that they were lawfully authorized to make. I hope that answers some of that.
Yeah, it did. I mean, from the point of view, but I guess if I was doing one of those services, wouldn't that send a cold chill down
Yes.
that you're exposing yourself,
Yes.
even though you're a public servant trying to do the best for the
Yeah,
population?
there are impossible studies to conduct that should exist that tell us that post George Floyd and when qualified immunity goes the way of the dodo, how it's impacted the affirmative steps cops take as opposed to reactionary. Right? They're not proactive, they're reactive because they're like, you know where I can't be sued? When I don't do something. I can be sued when I do something. We're just never going to be able to study that and say, I mean, maybe someone could look at the number of cases pre and post George Floyd and all the qualified immunity stuff, but that's legit. That's real. In fact, next time we have the chief and Matt in, we'll talk to him about that. Jim, great call, by the way, to finish this up. Thank you, my man. That was Jim from Aurora. Listen, we can continue this when we come back. We'll wait to see what happens with the phone lines. I'm also happy to talk about terrorist Tim Hamasdez and all the stuff going on with Israel. you just stick around with us. I'm still trying to get some of the other folks on the radio here to have this conversation with me. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here. Last hour of the Hump Day Show before we kick it over to a guy named Kirk. Then Prager, Gorka, live and local right here in the saddle with Deb Flora. And then from 4 to 7, Stefan Tubbs. I've heard he's got an interview with the governor. And even though you're not going to hear it on the radio, my understanding is it ended with a hug. I don't know what kind of hug. I know that that's what Stefan does, is try to hug every guest on his Swan Song tour. I don't know what he whispers in their ear, but maybe we'll find out at the show. You have to tune in from 4 to 7. Look, I want to wrap up that last conversation that we had in the back half of the last hour about the McClain case. Again, they're probably right now either they're deliberating or showing up to deliberate. And so I don't know which way the verdict goes, but somebody told me that the 7-year white collar prosecutor from the AG's office, he was the youngest guy out of the two by decades, I think. He was in the courtroom, but so were his parents. And regardless of my impression of how the case went and the presentation, I think that's pretty cool, man. I just don't think that people can appreciate how proud a parent can be of their son or daughter who's asked to do some heavy lifting like that in that McClain case. It doesn't matter what your position is on the side. This guy isn't the dude making the decisions about going to the grand jury and indicting. That's a Phil Weiser decision. This is a guy who's going in there trying to get justice as the government sees it. So the idea that mom and dad were in there, I'm sure they're just filled with pride about how their boy did, and they should be. And this person that told me this, I ended up reaching back out to them. And I said, that means a lot to me, because when I was a young prosecutor, my mom was diagnosed with brain cancer and died long time ago, like 25-ish years ago now, coming up closer to 26 years. I can't believe it. And she was about my age when she died, which is so hard to imagine. But she was an attorney. In fact, she's the reason I became an attorney. And she never saw me do anything in court. All the years I was a prosecutor up to that point, never saw me do a thing. I happened to mention that after her funeral. And I don't know, I think it made an impression on my dad, because without really sort of any fanfare or announcing it, as I was the very next thing I had to do, it's just so weird, the timing I did in court that was big, was a sentencing argument on a guy named Phil Duran. And he was one of the two guys that we convicted of selling firearms to Klebold and Harris out of Columbine. So that sentencing was huge. And there's my dad in the courtroom watching his son do his thing. So, that meant a lot to me all these years later. And I know it probably means a lot to that prosecutor on the AG side. Regardless of how this case turns out, they ought to be proud of that. I just thought that was a pretty cool, humanizing thing. We can talk about people at a pretty superficial level here, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact that every one of those people, good or bad, competent or incompetent, and that includes Phil too, by the way. He's a dad, he's a son, and I don't want to lose sight of that, because I think we then get to a point where we can get on the road towards trivializing them as people, and maybe even getting to the point that we see now over centuries of dehumanizing an entire group of people, like we've seen over in the Middle East. And that is a unintentionally tortured segue into this discussion about the horror that's unfolding in Israel. I don't need to tell you what's going on over there, other than to say that what is fascinating about watching the response to it is that in many ways, this is becoming a litmus test, even here in America, but worldwide. Not just about how you feel about Jews. That is definitely on the table, by the way. That is definitely on the table. But your concept of right and wrong and good and evil. This is a litmus test for that. This shows you, in my opinion, the divide between people who believe there is real evil out there and people who can find a way to rationalize just about any damn thing they want to, no matter how horrific. And we see it at the local level here, and we'll talk about terrorist Tim Hamasdez here in a moment. But also at the international level, when you hear people come out and condemn Israel for what took place, or to try to balance out the horror and evil of what Hamas has done against whatever perceived historical atrocities Israel has committed, as if one can justify the other or one can be blamed for the other. And then you see it here at the national level in different places. Now, many of you know that over the past few decades, Dearborn, Michigan has become a bit of a safe space or a magnet for people from Arab-speaking countries and Muslims. And that in and of itself isn't wrong. I'm not suggesting there's something wrong with that, but it is interesting and concerning / offensive to me that last night at a rally in Dearborn, Michigan, and Billy, you've seen the videos probably more than I have. Best guess on attendance, like how many were there?
I would say large, not necessarily mega church, but large church. They would easily be able to fill many of the larger churches here in town. So
less than 1,000, more than 1,000?
I'd say more than 1,000. My guess is if I had to just eyeball it, 1,500, 1,800, somewhere in there.
Man,
is what I would guess just based on venue size. It could be larger, it could be smaller. But again, I only saw shots that were done 45-degree angle off the stage where they were. So I'm just judging based on size of the stage when they panned the crowd. Although if you came back and said, listen, idiot, that was a 3,500 person auditorium, I could see that too. I just didn't see the full
You're just
scope.
going based off of what you could see.
Only based on the angle and just kind of approximating everything else out there. So I'm guessing it's a venue that holds right around 1,500.
So
but
Billy
I easily could be wrong, and that would only be the
second time,
17th time this morning. So,
these three clips we're about to play, Billy, they're all from that event, right? That took place in Dearborn. This is a mosque. I believe it's a mosque. It has that feel to it, but it is at least a gathering of a bunch of Muslims, and you'll hear the kinds of things they were talking about. Now, before I play it, I should just say some of the revelations of what's taken place include not just paragliders coming in with automatic weapons to mow down the unarmed and unsuspecting Israelis and Americans, by the way, at this music festival celebratory thing, but kidnapping, raping, mutilating. There are stories now. Fox News reported on a story where they believe that Hamas had beheaded 40 infants. That's Fox News that's reporting that. If it was just like Bob's blog, I don't know what credibility it has, but I've seen it posted a bunch, and Fox News reports on it. Doesn't mean Fox News can't be wrong, but holy smokes. And that's been echoed, by the way, by other reporters on the ground there. The ones that are always wearing the helmets and the body armor and all that other stuff, that there are atrocities continuing to be perpetrated here by Hamas. I've heard stories of Hamas taking the phones of a grandmother and using their phone to video her murder and then uploading it to her own Facebook page and stuff like that. Now, there's going to be a lot more stories that come out like that, but these are acts of pure evil, even independent of those individual stories. Acts of pure evil. There's just no simple way to justify them. Well, yesterday in Dearborn, Michigan, some people who are occupying Dearborn, Michigan, as I don't know if they're Americans, they're on visas. We ought to know the difference because we can do something about one of them. We can't do something about the other. But listen to these kinds of comments.
But I'm showing you all of this for a reason.
Hold on. That's not that. It's this.
But they left a fire in our hearts that will burn that state until its demise. Thank you very much. Thank you, Imam. Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free.
Now, for those out there that missed it, this is an imam named Imam Salah, who is ramping up the crowd by saying that Israel will burn to the ground. That state, what's that? Yeah, that will burn to the ground. Just take a listen to this.
But they left a fire in our hearts that will burn that state until its demise. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah, he's an imam from Detroit, Michigan.
Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
Now, this is important, this last part right here, that chanting that's starting, because there are those out there who want to be defensive of the entire thing. There are also those who want to say, oh, this is Hamas. This is not Palestine. This is Hamas. They have an iron grip over Palestine. The Palestinians are not responsible for this. We shouldn't vilify the Palestinians. This is Hamas. That right there tells you, at least with that group out of Dearborn, Michigan, they make no distinction. They make no distinction between free Palestine and those terrorists, those evil terrorists that went in and committed the atrocities that we've talked about. They make no distinction. But wait, there's more.
Palestine will be free! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free! No justice! No justice! No justice! No justice! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
By the way, this is a trend that's growing. It's one of the dumbest things out there. First off, I don't know where the drum comes from, why they use the drum. But this is a thing where these extremists will grab hold of a microphone, and the crowd, the willing crowd of these lefties or extremists or whatever they are, will repeat anything that's being said. I mean, had this guy chanted, "Set yourself on fire," these people, they're like the Animal House crowd being sworn in to the fraternity, right? I state your name. They'll say anything. So if they'd said, hey, set yourselves on fire, they'd be like, set yourselves on fire. Another guy that's participated in this is terrorist Tim Hamasdez. I saw one that he had done for the striking, I think, Kaiser Permanente workers or something, where he's standing up there in front of this group of just mindless picketers, and he's just chanting, labor power, worker power. And then whatever version or order of those words he said, these lemmings would just repeat it back, worker power. And then he'd emphasize other words, power, labor, and they would just repeat the same thing. This is what's going on here. But the point is this: these folks make no distinction between Palestine and Hamas. How refreshing would it be to hear Palestinians come forward and say, listen, in no way are we absolving Israel for what conditions we're in. In no way are we forgiving them for what has taken place between us and them over the day. But we're not Hamas. We do not support what Hamas has done. Whatever has happened to us, you do not meet it with rape and torture and beheadings and the murdering of the unsuspecting and the unarmed. How refreshing would that be? How credibility building would that be for Palestine? But when you hear this kind of BS being chanted in the face of those atrocities, I don't know. Who do you blame? Who do you blame? Do you blame Palestine for permitting Hamas to be in a position to do this and supporting them with their silence, their complicity? Or if you're like one of the other speakers here at this rally, you blame someone else.
Free Palestine! They said, the American government said what happened last Saturday was unprovoked. We don't want to be violent. We are not violent people. We are full of love. But when you have 75 years of ethnic cleansing, 56 years of occupation, 15 years of a blockade, that means nothing is unprovoked in Palestine. They have to understand. That's why we are frustrated here today.
Did you catch that right there? It's the, you just have to vomit it out. We're a peaceful people. We're all about love. We condemn violence, except this violence because it was provoked and that makes it okay. Doesn't that sound remarkably like Bamba, if that's the right name, of the caller that we had yesterday? I condemn all acts of violence. No, you shouldn't do that. But I will not condemn Hamas. All killing is bad, but I will not condemn Hamas. Folks, this is becoming a litmus test on the idea of good and evil and right and wrong. And these people right here, and God bless them for exercising their First Amendment rights. I encourage it because I want to know who you are. But they are wrong. They are supporting evil. There is a position to take here that can both embrace what has taken place between Israel and Palestine still can be victims of Israel, and they can still condemn evil Hamas. You know, the question I have is there a place on our planet, a civilized planet, for Hamas? Is there a place for them? Where is it? Because it seems to me it's in the ground. How can you negotiate, rationalize, or talk about any sort of peace with a group that would engage in this kind of behavior? I don't think you can. Listen, I want to get your calls at 303-696-1971. I can't do it, though, until I tell you about this right here. I've got them right here, the little free packets. If you haven't done it yet, would you pretty please give yourself the gift of a little bit of pain relief here, or a lot of bit of pain relief, depending upon your situation? I'm holding up the Ultra Cur samples that you get for FREE. You get them from natural grocers. I'm telling you, this is a curcumin product. It's a patented method of doing this. The success is undeniable. The studies that the Ultra Cur people have say that within 48 hours, 50% of the people that try this product are feeling pain relief. And of that group, 50% of them feel it within 2 hours. How can you not want to do that? I do it. I do it because I'm an older/younger gentleman still trying to figure out a way to put my body in a position to finish the Marine Corps Marathon coming up here in just a few weeks. God, I say it out loud, and I even regret more every time I've made this decision, but I'm stuck. I've committed to it. But Ultra Cur helps to take away that pain. It lessens the inflammation. It does all of these things. And all you have to do to get the benefit of it is you can go check out your natural grocers. They're everywhere. Don't look for it on the shelves. They won't do that because one person will come in and grab up all the free stuff. That's just not, I mean, hell, they steal the stuff that's for sale in a lot of stores. This stuff is too good to just leave out. All you have to do, though, to get your free 3-day sample, and you can get one for another person, is to go to the Vitamin Manager. Talk to the Vitamin Manager. They'll give you the free samples, and then give it a shot and let us know how it goes. I think you're going to be thrilled with the outcome right there. But that's Ultra Cur. You can also go online and check them out at getultranow.com. That's getultranow.com. Let's go right back to the phone lines. Jim from Denver, you're on 710. Jim, what do you think?
Hey, good morning. I think we have been so fortunate in this nation who have had the immigration from the European area over our history. And we're going to have immigration from some very undesirable places in the future. And what you're seeing happen back there, where is it, Dearborn?
Dearborn, yeah.
Yeah, Dearborn has been infiltrated along with a couple other places, but primarily Dearborn. And they are changing our society. And they are there for a reason. They're there because the employment group has decided to put them in their factories, and because we're running out of young people.
Well, what's the answer to that, Jim?
Well, we missed the answer. The answer was taking care of ourselves and circulating our own money in our nation so we could actually afford to have that American dream and carry on our family name other than just government employees.
Yeah, but how would that help us with getting that younger generation of workers and stuff?
Well, if we had enough people to go and fill the jobs rather than chase the stock market, because that's the stock market and Bitcoin. The young people now don't look at work as something that's viable because of our last 50 years. So young people know now that work is a 4-letter dirty word, and they don't intend on doing it until they're made to do so. You don't want your kids to be a plumber, do you? And what if one of your kids came and said,
I'll be
hey,
honest,
listen,
Jim,
I'm going to be a carpenter.
No, I'm not opposed to any of that. What I want them to be is the best at whatever they choose to be. Now, I want them to go to college. I want them to because I think college gives them more options. But whatever choice they make, I want them to be awesome at it, you know?
Well, you know what? Not all the young people should be going to college.
I agree with that
They
too.
they should be in this country doing something productive, at least for their peak, while they're capable. Now, if they need, when their body breaks down, when they're in their 50s, because they've used it up doing something productive, then let them sit down and do a sit-down job at a keyboard. But when you take young people at 19 years old and you put them in front of a keyboard in a chair with wheels for their entire life, that's not productive for the nation. You got to admit that.
I think there's a lot of going on here that impacts population just based off of the economy, some of the things you said. But what we know from across the planet is as your economic output and your quality of life improve, the number of kids you have drops. I mean, it just decreases. That just happens.
The more your children go to college, the more they put off having their own children.
I think that's true. I think that's true.
Education for women, and the Muslims will probably agree with that. And you might find a bunch of people out in Utah that agree with this as well. But you educate the women when you put them in college. And I'm not saying I advocate for this, but when that happens, they have fewer offspring.
I think the other thing that we're seeing here out of Dearborn, by the way, is the fallacy of our current approach to immigration, which is this belief that somehow, and I think we've done this deliberately over the last few decades, that they're all going to somehow assimilate into the American culture.
You're 1000% right. They're not going to.
We don't even encourage it anymore. In fact, we discourage it. We encourage people to pair off into their little groups. I heard someone liken it to, instead of a melting pot, that it's a salad bowl. And you got your clumps of this over here and your clumps of that over there. Well, we're seeing one of the clumps right here, and it's the piece I don't really like.
We've got to have some standards in this nation that we've never had before because of the influence that is being brought into this nation. These corporate leaders, these industrialists, would bring ISIS and put them into our factories if we would allow it. And I mean that when I say that. These people are only in it for the money. They don't care about anybody but themselves. They don't care about the nation. They are chasing the financial system that we have created. And therefore our offspring see that as the only success that they can have. And therefore, like you said a couple of weeks ago, you call people out to your house and they've got to look at a phone with the translator program. And it sounded like you weren't really too happy with that. But then again, we don't have Americans that are willing to do that gut work, right? Because we deserve better and all our kids deserve to go to college, or at least my kids do.
I don't know if they're not willing to do better. I mean, I presume in the absence of all of this low cost, near free labor, that the cost for labor would go up, and that would be reflected in other things, but then more people would take those jobs. So I get your point, Jim, and I understand that.
And that's what's happening with the people. There's like nine union people left in the nation. And what are they all doing right now? They're all effectively telling the nation that it's not working for them. As greedy as they are, or as hardworking as they're not, they are all telling the nation that they're done. Things have fallen behind. And maybe it's that 1 to 400 ratio of their pay to the financial sector pay that doesn't let them participate in America the way they once did.
Jim, thanks, man.
Sure.
Thank you, man. It's always good. It's always good to have a good conversation with you and to hear your thoughts on stuff like that. Listen, we're going to cut away for a break. We're going to come back and get the other call. Jim's line is open, by the way, 303-696-1971. Before I cut away, though, I need to tell you about Brent and Joyce Tolliver. They've got this super company called Roll 'em Out Shelves. You've heard about them before, but I'm telling you from my standpoint as a guy who wants to have efficiency in the kitchen. I'm not a great cook. I want to be. I've dreamt about it. I've thought about it. But the one thing that you know when you watch all those awesome cooking shows is not only do they know what to do with the ingredients and the tools that they have ready access to all the tools and the ingredients that they have. One way to do that is to ask Roll 'em Out Shelves to come out and do an assessment of your kitchen. Have them take a look and say, we can put the drawers here that make this thing so much more accessible, more quickly, easily. That's going to make you better and more efficient in that kitchen. I don't understand why you wouldn't. Probably the bathroom too. If you got those deep, deep places in your bathroom, in the cabinetry where you're like, I think I have something way in the back that used to cut hair. They can give you the roll-out shelves that make it so much more accessible. The testimonials are ridiculous. Here's some more. Joyce and Brent have completed 2 separate jobs in the kitchen, allowed us to utilize every space in our home, including false fronts that are now actually functioning drawers. You will not be disappointed. Great work, great price, quick turnaround, wonderful people, outstanding quality, awesome customer service. Those are just 3 separate testimonials. I got a list of them here. I just can't get to all of them. Here's the deal. Schedule your in-home estimate. You'll receive the first 4 rollouts installed at no charge. That's $80. $80 value right there. Give them a call, 303-475-9601, 303-475-9601, or you can check them out at rollemoutshelves.com. That's rollemoutshelves.com. When you get a hold of them, would you just tell them, I heard about you from that crazy dude, George, on the radio. When we come back, we'll get to your calls, your text. George Brauchler, 710 KUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. I quickly, before I get to Tony here on the line, I had mentioned, I think in the 6 o'clock hour, yesterday was Twin Aspen Dental Day for Big Daddy. I don't just read for them. They're actually my dentists. Dr. Richter was there. Schneider back in the saddle next week after my appointment. I'll have to wait 6 months to get back and see her, but brand new mom coming back to work. It's hard to know if that's good or bad. I can't remember what it was like for them, but she'll be back in the saddle. Fantastic experience. I think they have saddled Shiloh with me forever. So they're only going to let her be exposed to me because I imagine they've paid her off or something, or they've promised her extra money if she takes care of me. But they do such a nice job, such a great experience. It was efficient but pleasant. Felt no pressure, no stress. They even let me listen to the closing arguments in the McClain trial while they were out there chiseling away at my dental work. Visit them at twinaspendentalcenter.com, twinaspendentalcenter.com, or you can call them at 303-841-7466, 303-841-7466. They're my folks. I trust them with my mouth. You should too. Going right to the phone lines. Tony from Littleton, you're on 710. What do you think?
Hey, good morning. Ever since the day it happened, as soon as it was announced, I thought, what the hell is Hamas doing? I mean, why would they poke the bear that's like 100 times more powerful than them, knowing how Israel would react? And then add to that the atrocities committed by Hamas, the evil. I mean, and Biden called it right, the evil of what they've done. So then the question is why? I mean, I've got to always ask myself, what would be the motivation for doing that? And the only thing I can come to, and may or may be off base, is they with the backing of Iran may be trying to squirrel the diplomatic relationship that's being established between Saudi Arabia and Israel, with the U.S. mediating that right now. And you've probably heard about that. Yeah. And maybe what they're doing is they're saying, okay, Israel's going to respond in such a horrific way that eventually all Arab countries are going to, at minimum, have to stand back, if not openly support Hamas. So because Israel will murder so many people, and I say that when I say murder, that's the way they're going to play this. And now we're seeing what's happening. They got 300,000 guys on the border. They're getting ready to go in, and you kind of think about this. It's a place 150 square miles. It's basically Santa Fe to Parker Road, Lincoln to Arapahoe. I mean, that's where 2.4 million people live.
I know, hard to imagine.
And they're getting ready to invade them. The only advice I would be giving to Israel right now is make sure, open up and let a channel of medicine and food go in there, because they're already going to be accused of indiscriminately bombing civilians, but the civilians are being used as shields, and they know that, we know that, but if they don't allow medicine and food to go in, then it's going to be easier to point at Israel and say, now they're in the wrong, they've overreacted. And I can tell you right now, we would have reacted the same exact way. Our country would have reacted exactly the same way that Israel is. So
I think your question is a good one, man. And I think your analysis is pretty good too, which is, why did this thing happen? What's really going on behind the scenes? You've got all these different layers, right? One layer is, ever since Israel has withdrawn from the Gaza Strip and allowed Palestine to govern itself, it's really made it very difficult for them to do that, because it has, created these blockades or these limitations on what they can do. There's also the layer of Hamas, and a lot of Arabs out there believe that the Jews don't have any right to exist, that they are descendant of animals, and that this is very helpful, by the way, to that narrative for them. And I think you're right that on a geopolitical level, Iran is an enemy to Israel. And by enemy, I don't mean, hey, they'd like to do them harm. They're an existential threat to Israel. They would like to see Israel disappear altogether, including all the Jews with them. And I think you're right that this is a way for Iran to be involved with probably Hezbollah, which is much better armed than even Hamas. and Hamas towards the end of trying to drive a wedge between Israel and Saudi Arabia, and maybe even spur something bigger with the rest of the Arab world. And for a guy whose daughter's in the UAE, that part freaks me out the most.
And it explains too why the United States immediately came out and said, we recognized Israel 11 minutes after they became a nation state back in 48, and now we've got our military in there, and we are backing them to the hilt. And I mean, it's probably to try and deter Syria or Iran from playing any more games over there, because we've now made our presence felt. And and you as a military guy, our first role now is to try and defend our own ships that are now exposed over there. And God knows anything could happen. I mean, this thing almost looks like World War I, the way it started out, one shot between small groups and then people aligning behind the players. Well, right now, Israel's, we are depending on Israel to make the right decisions in how they respond. And part of it is allow that aid to get in there so they cannot be accused of war crimes, because right now Hamas is being accused of war crimes, legitimately so.
Yeah. No,
we need to keep it parked there.
I think that Israel, based on the comments of the leadership, has moved past the idea of this is going to be surgical. I think they're beyond surgical.
Absolutely.
I think this is much more like chemo radiation times a million. We're just going to target the entire area, and we're going to eradicate the cancer. And it's going to leave a lot of scars.
A government spokesperson, this woman, had made an announcement what would be the middle of the night for us, and it was basically, if you're living anywhere close to a Hamas, whether it's a mosque, a school, a hospital, if Hamas is at all close to you, you better just move, because we're coming. And it was like warning. Yes, civilians will be killed, and more will be killed if you stick around those facilities. So move. But there's not a lot of places to move. Egypt's cut them off. They can't get out there, and they certainly can't get into Israel. So it's ugly. And by the way, last point, and this is going to become an issue. You know that 50% of the Palestinian population is under 19.
No,
they're bombing children.
Incredible.
It's incredible. 50%. Yeah. You're killing 50% of who you kill are going to be children.
Yeah.
That's going to be a problem.
Adults. The other part too that I don't want to lose sight of is there's something right now, at least, and the numbers are going to change. I think I read somewhere that there's like in the teens of Americans who have been taken hostage. And I think that has generated some of the stuff that I've read and seen very, very recently while we're on the air about the SEAL Team 6 being mobilized. That's night time for whoever it is that they're targeting. But I don't want to lose sight of the fact that this has been a bit indiscriminate with Hamas. They may have been targeting Jews and Israelis, but they grabbed up some Americans too. That's a problem for them. And if I'm giving them advice, one, it's shoot yourselves. But if it's other advice that they might take, it's find the Americans, cut them loose, and fight the battle you really want to fight, because you don't want to fight that battle. That would be my advice to them. But I don't know, Tony. As always, I got to cut you loose.
Thank you.
Man. Thanks for the great call again, and I really appreciate the insights on that. A lot of that resonates with me. We're going to have on a historian tomorrow that Billy has found that's going to be able to make us smarter on all this stuff, maybe even disabuse us of some of the things we've been talking about. I got to cut away for a final break. There are some things I want to share with you, though, about terrorist Tim Hamasdez when we come back. Also, the Denver Post, by the way. But before I do that, let me tell you about QC Kenetix. QC Kenetix is in the give you a second shot at an energetic full life kind of people. And I'm not saying that they're out there curing cancer. No, that's not their target. Their target is pain, the pain that you get in your joints. And I'm talking pre-surgical intervention pain. Their goal is to find a way to get you back to a place where you can do all the hiking, walking, running, tennis, whatever it is that you're used to doing pain-free without having to go under the knife. And they do it through regenerative medicine. And that is a technique. You can Google this and do all the research that you want to do on it. I suggest you just go to qckinetics.com. But I would never stop there. I would pick up the phone and call their local medical professionals at 303-900-8986. That's 303-900-8986. Quiz them. Ask them all the questions. Treat them like they're a human FAQ, you know, the frequently asked questions. Just bludgeon them, even with infrequently asked questions. Doesn't matter. Get comfortable with them. Make the decision to move forward. Use you to fix you. No downtime, no exposure to the knife, no exposure to the infection and the pain pills and all that other rehab. Don't worry about that with QC Kenetix. They'll make it all right with just using you to cure you. Check them out at qckinetics.com. That's qckinetics.com. When we come back, the calls, the texts, last final thought here about the Denver Post and this terrorist Timmy Hernandez. When we come back, George Brauchler on the George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Not a lot of time left, but I did want to finish up a couple things here. Listen, terrorist Timmy Hamasdez, you know him as the appointed, selected, installed, not elected representative up there in Denver, a bomb-throwing Marxist extremist who has really shown his colors since he has been installed in this position. They call him a lawmaker in the paper, and it makes your tummy hurt, like you want to spit up in your mouth because you realize, my God, this guy could actually have a hand on making laws that govern us and our children. Hard to imagine. I don't want to rehash everything that he's done, but in addition to showing up with a smile on his face to a rally to support the Hamas massacre of the unarmed out there in Israel just a few days ago. He was there on video, and it took, I think, a lot of cajoling and arm twisting by the powers that be in the Democrat Party to merely get him to give that milquetoast denunciation. It's not even a denunciation, that milquetoast response to his presence at this thing. A video has surfaced. Now, it's on social media. I've seen it on Twitter. You can go to my Twitter account. I'm at George Brauchler. You can check that out. And it's a video taken by this dude who's clearly pro-Israel, anti-Hamas for this thing. And he's interviewing this guy with his phone. And it's just a small clip. I wish he'd released the whole video where he's confronting Hernandez, or Hamasdez, as I'm going to continue to call him, about his refusal to denounce the murder of women and children by Hamas. And you got to see this video, folks. You got to go out and find it and take a look at it, because this dude is a smug, smarmy punk. This dude's attitude when he's talking, he's got this look on his face. This guy says, hey, I want to ask you about this thing. And he starts off with this very condescending, congratulations, congratulations. And someone pointed out he's got the kind of glassy look in his eyes, like maybe the dude's been hitting the bong. Maybe. I don't know that that's either here nor there, but whatever. And then this guy says, hey, you know, Hamas has been out there murdering women and children. And his response at this rally is, what about it? Very dismissive, condescending. And this guy goes, well, are you going to condemn it? Are you going to say that you're going to condemn it? And he goes, well, I've already said my answer on that. And he goes, no, you haven't. And he goes, yeah, I already said my answer on this. He goes, anyone that watches this video is going to see that you haven't denounced it. And he goes, who's going to see your, I think, crappy, except he didn't use the word crappy, little video? The three people that are going to see your crappy little video? Thank you, egotistical, Marxist, extremist, Hamas lover, because that video has gone viral. In fact, it's gone so viral, there are now stories locally and elsewhere about how it's gone viral. And Hamasdez said it's going to be viewed by three people. The last thing I saw last night was that it was up over 3.3 million views. Oh, yeah, 3.3 million views for this guy who, like Rashida Tlaib, has dug his heels in. He refuses to call out what Hamas did as evil, refuses to denounce it. So the Denver Post shows up, and they do a piece purportedly calling him out. Representative Tim Hernandez shouldn't stay silent on the murder, rape, and torture of innocent Israelis. And it's a start. But here's what's fascinating about this to me. You go ahead and read it, by the way. You should know the editorial board for the Post is Megan Schrader. She writes all the stuff. And I used to work for Megan. We've had her on the radio a couple times. Read it, because it is a slight denunciation. But then I want you to go and check out Megan Schrader's, under her name, her opinion piece on Boebert's outrageous behavior at the Beetlejuice show. The tone, tenor, and language used to take down Lauren Boebert is stronger and more condemning about what she did at the Beetlejuice thing than about this guy in our state legislature standing up in support of Hamas after the murder, rape, torture, and killing of the unarmed after this. And by the way, still mum's the word totally silent. Governor Jared Polis, Jewish, who's using social media to tweet about, aren't the changing of the leaves pretty? Jenna Griswold, who's out there either tweeting about pro-abortion stuff or I stand with labor stuff, but won't say anything about this. And of course, Phil Weiser, who's been absent from the McClain trial from the very beginning. He's out there finding out what people's thoughts are on Kroger-Albertsons merger, but says nothing about Tim Hernandez. Well, we're going to continue to shine a light on terrorist Timmy Hamasdez and all the other stuff. Stick around. We'll be back tomorrow. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.